5:29. Good evening. Today is March 17th, 2025. The time is 5:30 p.m. I'm calling you to tonight's work session. And please note for the record that the timer is going to be set for 15 minutes on the presentation, so try to get as close as you can. If we have to go over a little bit, that's fine. And first up, we have agenda item A, and that's going to be Brian McCain from the mayor's office.
Thank you, sir. Quick update from the city. PD last Saturday, Pueblo Police SWAT and the Pueblo Metro Bomb Squad attended the American Red Cross Pasta in the Park event in Bessemer Park. This event was a community event to wrap up the Red Cross's Sound the Alarm campaign, during which, in partnership with the Pueblo Fire Department, smoke alarms were installed in homes across the Bessemer neighborhood to ensure functionality in case of fire. We want to give a special recognition to the 10th Judicial DA's office, DA Kayla Bouvet, and her team, as well as Pueblo police officers and detectives for 3 difficult, well-investigated, and well-prosecuted cases, which last week returned guilty verdicts. Solomon Martinez, all counts, including first-degree murder, and Mithya Latka, first-degree murder, and a guilty plea on an officer-involved shooting. Dion Councilor Rivera attempted first-degree murder and second-degree assault. Great work by all involved. Last week, we had officers out on overtime. We had 2 officers volunteer and 2 officers were forced over to patrol downtown area Wednesday and Thursday. Last week, they wrote 16 municipal citations, 1 state citation, conducted 31 business checks, made 1 felony warrant arrest, and issued 1 PR bond. We will continue these efforts for the time being. Also, code enforcement is actively working on the cleanup and abatement of a problem property on the 1100 block of Elm Street today and tomorrow. The EAS service was just announced by the Department of Transportation. They sent out a statement. The US DOT selects Key Lime Air Corporation, doing business as Denver Air Connection, to provide essential air service at Pueblo, Colorado for a 2-year term from February 1st, 2025 through January 31st, 2027. I think that'll actually start April 1st through March 31st of 27 once it's changed. Unfortunately, it wasn't Breeze Airways. I'll send a statement out from them and they kind of go over why they didn't select Breeze and why they went with Denver Air Connection, but you will see that as soon as I'm done and send it to your inboxes. The city of Pueblo is hosting 2 public meetings to discuss how federal CDBG and home funds can be used to improve housing, public services, and infrastructure. Tuesday, March 18th, the meeting is at 5 to 6:30 p.m. at Rawlings Library, Friends of the Library Room. Wednesday, March 19th, the meeting is 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Barkman Branch Library Community Room. If you need more information, contact Housing and Citizen Services at 719-553-2850. Pueblo Parks and Rec Summer Job Fair is Friday, March 21st. Drop in anytime from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Parks Administration Building, located at 800 Goodnight in City Park. Fill out an application, ask questions, and you may have a chance to interview. We're hiring for multiple temporary and seasonal positions with the Parks Department. For more info, go to pueblo.us/jobs. And then I wanted to introduce Katie Hester. She is the admin assistant to City Council. Her first day was Friday, really today. Friday was the paperwork section, but a little bit about Katie. And she's back there. You can see her. She grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, but spent summers as a kid traveling all over Colorado with her family. She moved to Denver in 2017, then to Pueblo almost 2 years ago. She has an associate's degree in physical therapist assisting, and after several years as a clinician, she transitioned to an operations admin role, later worked as an executive assistant at Amazon, then at a tech startup. She has 2 rescue dogs and a cat, and a lover of all animals, and in her free time, you can find her on a jogging trail, at the gym, or at a karate class. And do you want to talk about the town halls?
Yeah. So over the next few weeks, President Aliff and I will be hosting town halls throughout the community. The first one is going to be this Thursday night, starting at 5:30 at my restaurant, Graham's Grill, on the north side of town off of Jerry Murphy. We'll be there to answer questions from citizens and address any concerns about the May 6th election. And the Black Hills off-ramp and what that could potentially look like with timeline and credible information coming from the 2 of us. So you can find all of those postings on my personal Facebook page of when the town halls will be. And if it is in any of your prospective districts or at-large members, you're welcome to join, but just let us know if you'll be there so that we can post the meetings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And that's what we have. If there's any questions, if not, we can turn it over to Mr. Romero for the next part of the legislative update.
Okay, we have one question from Councilman Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. One, Mayor, for the town halls, will you have a presentation there or any materials to give out?
We'll have some Q&As, some frequent Q&As that we've been getting as far as material, but it's really just to answer questions and concerns. And there'll be a short recap of what's been going on and the timeline for the survey to come back, what the election is asking the voters to do on May 6th, and what potential off-ramp could look like come August, and next steps after if the city does decide to take the off-ramp, what that could potentially look like.
Okay, thanks. And then Brian, can you remind me so it was Denver?
Denver Air Connection. So they'll be
Do they
flying.
just from Springs to Denver?
They will be from Pueblo to Denver
Or
12
Pueblo.
days a week
Okay, anywhere else?
or 12 flights a week.
12 days a week.
12 days a week, 12 flights a week, 7 days a week. Pueblo to Denver.
Just Denver though, not anywhere else?
Yeah, they'll have partnerships, I think how it works, and I'll send you the letter with other airlines where it could connect. So it's, you're flying to wherever, it's the connection in Denver, so.
Okay.
Council Flores, you have something?
No.
Oh, okay, Brett?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's some kind of sad news to hear. I know a lot of people were really looking forward to more worthwhile flights, I would put it. But I guess that wasn't up to us. So at least we got something, and hopefully we can build off of this and maybe people can find some use out of it. But in regards to those town halls, I would like to say, props to everybody, county, city, Madam Mayor, Mark, really taking a big stand against Black Hills and getting the rate increase as low as it is as of now. I still think a little above 7% is still not enough. I still think any rate increase is ridiculous. So I think keeping up this good fight and seeing if there's any other things we can do to help make the rates better for the citizens is a good stand to take. So just keep up the fight, guys. We showed them who's boss already so far, so let's keep showing them who's boss going forward.
Council Latino?
Yes, I'd like to add to Councilman Boston's comments. We need to move forward with in going off ramp with this Black Hills industry, and it's a concern of mine, and it has been for a long time. Anyway, he said it, and I agree with him, and we need to move forward. Thank you.
And before we go on, Councilor Maestri is on Zoom. Are you there, Councilor?
Yes, Chair Gomez, can you hear me?
Yes, you need anything?
Yes, I actually have a question for the mayor and the town halls and so forth. We've been saying for so long that it's really important that we have the study so that we can answer a lot of questions. How do you feel you're going to, what's your plan when a lot of the questions that are going to be asked are going to be focused around the survey? So what is your plan for that?
Councilor Maestri, the first two town halls that we'll have will be before the study is done. So I expect those to be just more informational, ballot language, what that looks like, what it would look like if we off ramp. Once the study comes back and we have the presentation to council, we can focus our efforts more around what the study says to help answer people's questions.
Well,
That's why we're doing so many.
yes, I saw that. I noticed that we don't even have an update on the study on the schedule until April 6th or 7th. Has that changed?
No,
So then all the town halls are scheduled before then?
no, there's 3 of them that are after.
Oh, they're after?
Yes.
Okay, was there a change from the initial schedule that was posted online?
I think that there was a change that I made because I was looking at the wrong month, but
Mhm.
the dates were always after the April 7th deadline. And that's the council presentation, so we hope to have that survey back sometime the first week of April. So once
Mhm.
we have it, we'll share it with all of council.
And when I saw the Board of County Commissioners meeting last week, when you mentioned it, when you announced it at council the night before, you didn't open the invitation to council to attend. And then also in the presentation and what you were talking to them about was bringing the county in on all of this. And so that kind of was it's not like it was an impossibility, but it was kind of news that we were even headed in that direction. And so if we are headed in that direction, aren't we going to have to invite the other communities in to see, in that division of Black Hills Energy, wouldn't it be wise to invite all those communities in to have a conversation with them also?
Yes, that's part of what the study is looking at, whether, what it would look like for regional. So anybody that Black Hills currently provides power to, and we've been in contact with those other communities already. But like you
Mm.
said, we won't have all of the information until we have the study back. So I apologize, Counselor, for not inviting all of council to the work session. Counselor Martinez was coming from another meeting and she was there, so she hung around and made a statement, but it was more for us to kind of just tell the county of what the ballot language would be. They were very unaware of what the ballot language was going to consist of, what the city's plan is, and what our next steps. So it was just more informational about where we are at this point is what we were expected to present that day.
And don't you think it would offer more transparency to the citizens when they make the vote on May the 7th? Hear directly from those communities and what they think? Because I know the concern is that if we municipalized and went on our own, that it could affect their rates. Um, but also, I think the citizens would like to see that through the off-ramping process, and which would probably have to leave to condemnation at that point, who is going to be willing to be part of the costs in that process? Because, they could run tens of millions of dollars, and if we're doing a whole division, are these other cities in counties within this Black Hills region, if they're willing to pay for part of that process? I mean, there's like a whole, if we're going to be inviting the whole division in to do this takeover, are we, I think the citizens would want to know, is the city of Pueblo paying for this? Is it city county? Is it city county, um, Canyon City, Chirac, um, West Cliff, Silver Cliff, all of those cities that are involved in the region?
Yes, Counselor, I can't answer that question at this time because we don't have the study back to tell us which way would be most feasible for the city and our region. I mean, we definitely don't want to leave our partners at the county out of this, or our regional partners who are also serviced in the Black Hills territory. But unfortunately, until we have that study back, that's not really a determination we as a city can make. And that's why we haven't offered any information past this point of more than talking about ballot language, what the survey is looking for, what the survey will consist of, what it would mean if we off ramp, and what next potential steps could be after off ramping. So until we get that information back, those aren't really questions that we have the answers for at this point. But we will make sure that we have the communication with all of the prospects in the Black Hills territory. Some have already off ramped, and we will continue those communications and conversations moving forward once we have the survey back.
Yeah, because I would be interested in knowing how everyone involved in the region feels about this decision being made with just by the vote of city council, basically in the end. Um, and if they feel comfortable with that, or did they want to be part of the vote, or how that's going to happen? Because before we went into the expense of an election and so forth, and maybe it is something that everybody in the region would like to do, but they want to also participate in that decision. Um, so I guess there's just a whole lot of things. It seems like we're changing from, week to week, on how we're going to do this process. And I'd like to see a more uniform process, not just for myself, but for those involved who are voting for this decision to be made.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why it's only up to the city voters is because only the city collects the franchise agreement, the franchise fee. So if the city was to, if the voters, said, take this off ramp, it's feasible, and the city decided to take the off ramp, Black Hills would still be the city's service provider until we came up with a better plan. Moving forward, unlike the county, they don't have a franchise agreement with Black Hills. That's only the city. That's why the city voters are going to be the ones to make that decision, if feasible, that the city will take the off ramp.
Well, I understand that. I think most people could understand that. But the thing is they could be voting to off ramp, and then we get together with all the other partners in the region and can't come to a decision that that's what we want to do as a whole. And so then we've off ramped and lost the revenue from that off ramp. I just think that when you're getting preparing to do your town halls and stuff, you probably should have some answers to those questions if they're asked.
Sure. And we will have, potentially 3 months to also have continued conversations from the May election until if the city council decides to choose the off ramp. So there's still a lot of time and, unforeseen questions that are dangling out there. But as soon as we get the information, the 7 of you will be the first to have it.
Alrighty, thank you.
Okay, anything else from council? We good? All right, let's move on to our next the lobbyist update.
Thank you,
Mayor Gill?
Councilor Gomez and members of City Council and Mayor Graham. Thanks for the opportunity. We'll try to be very brief this evening. I just want to give you an update on the bills that the City Council has asked us to work on and to lobby on. First one is Senate Bill 62. That's the failure to appear in municipal court. That's up tomorrow. City Attorney Carla Sykes will be up tomorrow in person to testify on that bill. And we've been lobbying on it as well. But that one is scheduled for its first hearing in House Judiciary tomorrow morning upon adjournment. House Bill 1147, the fairness and transparency in municipal courts. That's scheduled for Monday, March 31st. As you know, members of the mayor and police chief and city attorney testified on that bill. Also, the city attorney Carla Sykes came up this past week. We had a conversation with the sponsor of that bill, Representative Mabry, and we also met with Senator Hendrickson on Senate Bill 62. So I think those are really fruitful discussions. I will tell you that House Bill 1147 is in trouble based upon all of the lobbying effort to kill that bill. So it has been obviously put off the calendar for a period of time, but we think we will have the votes to kill that bill in the Senate. The other bill that we were following was the extreme indifference offenses not causing death. That's in committee for its first hearing on March 19th, and we'll send out a report. And finally, Senate Bill 4, regulating child care center fees. Councilor Martinez, I didn't jinx it. That bill is going to the governor for signature, and we appreciate all of your advocacy on behalf of that bill. I will tell you that you will get an extensive report from us tomorrow on the state budget. It will have some impacts on the city. The one in particular that I want to point out to you is that one of the cuts that they're making is to take away all of the legal counsel, the alternate defense counsel budget. So then that would fall upon the cities to appoint public defenders for indigent defendants in municipal court, and we're obviously fighting that particular cut. So that's our report. You'll get a report from us on the March revenue forecast, and we'll also report to you on where the state stands in terms of the state budget sometime either Tuesday or Wednesday. And that's our report. Thank you for the time.
Council Flores, please.
Gil, last week I brought up the situation where the federal government is pulling back on a lot of programs, laying people off, closing offices. And I noticed, I don't know whether it was in the Denver Post regarding Colorado losing 9.2 million this past week, having to do with leases, federal government offices that they're going to be terminating leases. And that is just one item, but is there anyone in the state government that's looking at the impact that these decisions that are being made in Washington, how they're going to affect a community like Pueblo, how it's going to affect the state of Colorado, how many people have lost their jobs, how many veterans have lost their jobs, and information like that. Is there a clearinghouse, somebody that's looking at all of this? And how does a city like Pueblo get information like that?
We will, I don't know if there's a link up yet. Excellent question, Councilor Flores. There may be a special session predicated on federal impacts involving Medicaid and law enforcement, education. But we will send you the information we have now. In fact, during the presentation on the forecast, one of the reasons that the economic outlook for Colorado has diminished is because of the uncertainty around exactly how much the federal decisions are going to make. We will get you some information on that. As I said, I don't think there's a state link yet, but there have been a number of reports predicated upon, what they're talking about at the federal government now. As you know, their fiscal year is different than ours. It ends, I think, either ends in September or at the end of September. But we'll get you some information on what we know now. But we're anticipating that the state legislature may come back in June in special session again, probably to re-examine the state budget if those federal impacts impact the state budget.
There was a story about a week ago, one of the Colorado Springs TV stations, that Colorado Springs could be facing a loss of 13,000 jobs, which is a big number. And I know that a lot of those jobs are held by people in Pueblo. I think we have as many as 1,000, maybe more than that, that commute back and forth from Springs to Pueblo. I think it could be as high as 2,000, not all government workers, but that's why I'm concerned about it. It'd be nice to know that there is a method to all of this and that there's at some point information that can point us in the right direction.
Yeah. All the indices are there, Councilor Flores, in terms of sales tax have dropped. I think, the outlook I think there's so much uncertainty. Sales tax has dropped. That's why we're seeing lower revenue coming into the state. And that's why when we get the report tomorrow from the Joint Budget Committee, we're going to probably see that their hole's probably bigger, but we'll get you that report out. And if we find a link in terms of getting you up-to-date information on federal impact, we'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, and then lastly, my last question had to do with the Medicaid reimbursement stat. I don't have the number here in front of me, but the two hospitals here in Pueblo were very concerned about a new formula having to be implemented that could really affect their reimbursement charges. Do you remember that House bill?
Yeah, it's House Bill 1174. That's been on the calendar for House debate. We just heard a report, or we're in a meeting this morning that particular bill probably will not. It may pass the House, but it's going to die in the Senate. There's a competing bill that's going to be introduced that I think has more stakeholder involvement, and I think at least the hospitals would not have the kind of significant impact that we would see in House Bill 1140 41. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. A number of our other healthcare clients are really concerned about that bill as well. But that bill will be up. You know, it's on the calendar, but it may pass the House. But I can tell you, it is not going to pass in the Senate.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from council? Council Maestri, anything?
Yes, Mr. Romero, I was looking recently at House Bill 1214, appropriate use of prison beds. I'm not sure if I interpreted it correctly, but I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it. It seems to be a state issue with state prisons, but from my understanding, it looks like they're going to not require class 4 and 5 felonies to be incarcerated or have to be incarcerated. Could you explain that a little bit?
A good question, Councilor Maestri. We'll get you some more information. There's actually 3 bills. We'll probably send all 3 to council that are really looking at the bigger picture with the Department of Corrections. There's always a discussion. There's always a controversy about what are the most important beds in the system. And right now, what they're concerned about is there are a number of people that are in minimum security beds that the only reason they're actually taking up a bed is because they haven't received the appropriate services for reentry, and in particular housing, substance abuse treatment. So that's just one of the bills that they're tracking. But and there are a couple of bills, and I think yours is the one we'll take a look at it this evening after this call, where they're trying to change the sentencing on the lower class felonies that would not require incarceration. But I don't have enough information on that this evening to give you, but I will follow up. There's also a bill that the Colorado, the Joint Budget Committee is going to carry as well that would, try to put give us a better handle on the beds we have. There are a number of communities that their entire economic development is really associated with the prison. For example, Lyman, Rifle, a number of these areas, Delta, and there was a request from the governor's office that some of these facilities be closed. That decision has been rejected by the Joint Budget Committee, but we'll get you some more information. It's a very complicated issue in terms of trying to get the right amount of beds. And I don't think anybody really, at least in this budget cycle, that really wants to prioritize building another prison right now. So they're trying to figure out what the right mix is.
Yeah, I think the community needs to know about these things. We're putting ordinances in place that actually take some of these offenders at the municipal level into custody. And yet the state is working against us by, reclassifying some of their felonies and putting them back out on the street. And so I think that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. That was the issue, that I think really was blown out of proportion in terms of what they're doing in reclassifying some of the misdemeanors that that changed. How the home rule cities have decided to treat certain things like theft, shoplifting, trespass, those kinds of things. So as I said, it is a hotly debated issue up here. That's the reason you're seeing these 3, actually 4 bills. One, actually, the Colorado Municipal League is a good bill in terms of bail. But we'll get you more information on the bill that you highlighted this evening, and we'll send it out to all of City Council.
Okay, and so am I hearing you correctly? They're making some of these decisions for budget cuts, correct?
Well, they're looking at a number of things. For example, that alternate defense council, which is a significant budget that is specifically designated for municipalities. I'm not sure exactly what the city of Pueblo uses from that. I can't remember. I think your city attorney mentioned that during our meetings this past week, but that would be a hit to the city if that money goes away. And it is
Correct.
all as a result of the $1.2 billion shortfall. Yes.
You know, and I noticed they didn't have an answer to how they expected the municipalities to replace that at the legislative breakfast the other day. But then I look at a bill, I was looking at a bill where they want to fund, let me see, which one was it called? Because this is how, like, I feel like how ridiculous this logic is behind all of this. I think it's Colorado House Bill 1137, basically funding feral cat communities, programs.
Yeah.
You know, programs for feral cats, and yet we're going to fund that, but we're going to cut funding that really affects the safety and welfare of our community. And so that's like a perfect like example of the illogical decisions that they're making up there. And
Yeah.
that's all I have to say.
Yeah, and it's hard to reconcile, Councilor Maestri.
Mhm.
And I've explained that when our city officials have come up, it's difficult for me to explain. I served for 14 years, but I understand your concern. A lot of these things, it's hard to understand the priorities of particular legislators. But as I said,
Yeah, and it's pretty hard to, be critical of our government when they're going in and they're just starting to, basically forensic audit all of the stuff that comes on at a national level, to try to clean up like reckless spending so that we could, somehow in this country become a little bit more cost effective with the taxpayer dollars. hmm All right. Well, thank you for your time.
thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Romero. We're
Pastor
going to move
Gomez.
on
Thank you.
to our next presenters. We've got agenda item. Up next is the sheriff, and it's going to be in reference to the operations of the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office. Also in attendance is Under Sheriff Steve Bryant. Try to keep it around 15, 20 minutes if you can, somewhere in there, but don't let the alarm set you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the City Council, as well as to all of those citizens that are in the gallery tonight and or in the chambers tonight, and also for those that are joining us online. I appreciate the opportunity to being asked to come and share with you some of the things that are going on with the Pueblo County Jail. And I'm going to just kind of hop right into it, but I wanted to start with a historical perspective as well for some of the new council members. Just to kind of give you all a history of where we came from and where we're going to. So really my goals for this evening are to provide education and perspective to the city of Pueblo and city council on the current state of affairs at the Pueblo County Detention Center, both the old one and the new one. And I'll happy to field any questions that you may have on that. But especially with regards to our ability to hold municipal prisoners in balance with the state prisoners that I'm required by statute to hold under our supervision. So going back to when the tower, as it's referred to, the old jail that we're going to be replacing, it opened October of 1980 with 189 jail beds. In 1989, the city closed their jail. At that current time, they were charging $31 per day for municipal inmates. As we go forward a little bit to October of 2004, there was a reduction, and because of overcrowding, that then Sheriff Corsentino made it a felony-only jail. At that point, no longer accepting misdemeanors except for domestic violence, mandatory arrests. Some municipal inmates traffic except for DUIs. Then in 2006, we opened the expansion of the 320-bed dormitory. That's the linear style building that's next to the old tower. And then in 2007, Sheriff Taylor opens up to municipal disorderly conducts, municipal fail to pay or appear warrants, restraining order violations for alcohol, and adjudicated municipal sentenced inmates. Currently in the jail, there's 10 beds that are allocated for the city of Pueblo for those folks that have been convicted and been sentenced. As we move into the new jail, that expands to 30 beds that'll be available. In 2011, the process of 4-hour holds were no longer accepted due to high injuries, from multiple injuries to deputies and other staff, as well as some lawsuits and litigation that came that resulted in very high payouts. In 2014, our judicial building opened. All new arrests currently are being taken there. However, when we transition to the new jail, that will be moved back into the to the new jail. So that will be our central receiving location for all of the new arrestees in the county. We all remember 2019. That's when we cut off the municipal charges that were not going to be accepted due to COVID-19. Then in 2022, COVID subsides and intake, they start to normalize. In 24, I spoke with Chief Noller, whom, by the way, have a great working relationship and really respect. But he came to me with concern with those folks that were committing theft of merchants. And really the example that he talked about was, you know, he would, his guys, men and women, would respond to, for instance, Home Depot, where, you know, and this is just one example that we discussed, where that person was apprehended for stealing over $300 in power tools. They caught him. They wrote this gentleman a ticket, and then he was released because it's, as you know, the crime levels were lowered by the state legislature. Half an hour later, he shows up at Lowe's and steals an additional $300 worth of tools. And again, a ticket was written. So one of the things that we were able to agree upon was that if they, in a calendar year, an offender that his police officers come across had 3 priors, that we would accept them into the jail on that misdemeanor, both municipal and or state charges for the theft for merchant. Toward the end of 24, I think it was around December 6th, I received a letter from Mayor Graham and Chief Noller requesting that I accept additional municipal inmates and some state offenses that were currently misdemeanor crimes. And as I mentioned earlier, but for those exceptions of mandatory arrest, we're still a felony-only jail. So I went back to the drawing board and looked to see where I could help and what I could do. And I was able to agree in 2025 to these misdemeanor charges of unlawful carrying of a concealed weapon, which is a firearm, unlawful possession of a weapon, prohibited use of weapons, possession of defaced firearms, theft 300 or more, and criminal mischief 300 and more. So those were the misdemeanor crimes that when I went back and looked to see what liabilities we had and what we could accommodate to help our partners at the city, that was the areas that I was able to address. I should note too, also, I share with City Council individually letters in those correspondence, so you all should have received those. If not, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to share those with you if you didn't get them. I wanted to talk about some best practices that we have. You know, when we look at El Paso County, our neighbors to the north, they're not accepting any municipal arrests, only warrants. And their average daily rate, what the city of Colorado Springs is paying, is $88.72 per day. And those charges start at booking. No disorderly conducts. They will not accept municipals from other jurisdictions. We look at Jefferson County. They do take municipals, but only for arrestable charges such as warrants, failure to appear, minimuses, and disorderly. Summit County, they do take municipal arrests, and they're getting receiving $45 per day, and those charges start upon booking. They will take any charge if it's a public safety concern. And that is another agreement that I had with Chief Noller, in that if it is a municipal and it's a threat to public safety within the city of Pueblo, we put a process in place where his watch commanders or his staff can reach out to our staff at the jail and request that we accept those inmates that may be a threat to the community. So that was another agreement that we made. And if it is public safety related, that it's a danger to this community, absolutely, I want to be a partner with our men and women at the Pueblo Police Department in ensuring that we're keeping this community safe. I wanted to share some stats with you from 2014 to 24. Municipal bookings have fluctuated anywhere from 7 to 76 on a monthly average. The low of 7 was during the COVID pandemic. 8.7 of the total bookings for 24 were municipal charges only. 475 of the total, 5,439. The cost charged to municipal inmates has not increased over the last 10 years. And we estimate those costs to house those inmates has increased roughly 19.4% since 2011. Currently, we currently charge to the city, what we currently charge only covers about a little over half, 52% of what it's actually physically costing the county and me to house those municipal inmates. Then the average length of stay for municipal inmates is in 24 was 31 days and 11 hours. That's just a chart to kind of demonstrate where we were at with bookings, municipal arrests. And you can see as we hit 2019 into 2021, but now they're on the rise in the last 3 years since I've been the sheriff in 22, 23, and in 24. So some justifications for that, as I mentioned earlier, 19.4%. Municipal inmates, they account for increased staff hours due to disorderly behavior. They may be detoxing. They may have medical concerns, all of which is not covered in what the city is currently paying us for municipal inmates. There's an increased liability. I will say that we have a great working relationship and did with the city attorney when she was the judge and the current judge. If we have an inmate that's experiencing high costs, we can go to them and see if there's something we can do creatively to either remove this person from custody or whatever we need to do to manage that inmate. And these inmates increase liability. It's incurred by the sheriff for those volatile and medically unstable persons. This was our billing from 23 to 24 to the city of Pueblo. The current municipal rate's $45, and in 23 we invoiced for $329,400, and in 24 $598,000. If we would have been at where we needed to be, you can see the difference or the deficit that the county absorbed of $300,000 and $544,000, almost $545,000 for the inmates that were billed. The daily rate fluctuations, it depends on the population, staffing needs, and again, what the medical concerns are. This is just another overview of what you just saw with the amount of inmates that were in custody for that period of time from 23 into 24 at that $45 rate, just displayed in a different format. So the new jail is on track. We are scheduled to open January of 2026. That will give us some more resources. It will give the city some more resources. But I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have of me.
I'd like to ask a question. Bonia's going to jump in. I'm just curious. You said it was 52.3% to house the inmate, and then that's all we're contributing. How are you making up the rest?
The county's eating the cost right now. So that's another factor that went into my decision right now. So if I were to take municipal inmates in the future, we would have to certainly negotiate a higher rate to cover what those costs are going to be. Right now, that rate is at that $45 a day for those 10 beds that we're holding folks. But also on the front end, we start charging if they're booked on municipal charges only. If they're also booked with collateral charges such as state charges and municipal charges, then we are not charging the city for that. They're charged as a statutory obligation that I have as the sheriff until their state charges are done, and then the rate is applied, that $45 a day.
President Mark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sheriff, for the report. That's great information. And again, thank you for what you do for the community. We're glad to have you, and thank you for coming to see us because that's a big deal. You know, in 2018, I met with your predecessor because we were having this exact same conversation about how this is an issue with municipal inmates. The city attorney asked for some help. I said, as a counselor, I try and do what I could. it was interesting that in that conversation, I'm hearing pretty much the same things now that I heard back in 2018. With Sheriff Taylor, it was there seemed to be a lot of angst over what the city was paying for inmates. And my conversation with him was, well, if we pay more, can we finally get somebody put in jail? And it never went any further. But I'm hearing from you, and if tell me if I'm wrong, that if we paid what we're supposed to be paying for these inmates, then we wouldn't be having these conversations with our constituents of why we can't put people in jail.
To some extent, right? Because I still have to manage what the inmate population is. So the whole reason I was able to accommodate what we were able to accommodate was because of COVID and the decrease in our average daily population. Now, currently today, I have a capacity, as I shared earlier, 509 beds. That's what I have at the Pueblo County Jail. There were 444 inmates in the Pueblo County Jail this morning. So that variable, that difference between the 509 and currently today, as it fluctuates every single day, gave me some flexibility to do. And, I'm going to continue to monitor what I did open up and see how that's going to play out and if we can work to allow more in the future. Look, there's other issues at play here, and when you talked with Sheriff Taylor back in whenever you had that conversation, I mean, we're faced with these having to take state legislation when, I'm a statutory officer. So when the legislature decreases the crimes, it makes it more difficult for us because now they're misdemeanors. There was two categories, well, other than the firearms offenses, the theft over 300, as well as the criminal mischief, over $300 worth of damage that they could now be booked in on. But additionally, Mr. Aliff, I would say that when I was also doing my research on this, we looked at all of the municipal charges. And if there were any state charges that match or were very similar, and there's several that are, and if they're booked in on a state charge, I will take them. So there is, and any city of Pueblo police officer can write them. It's an affidavit process versus issuing them a summons. But that's available today.
So, I mean, obviously, I'm not in law enforcement and I don't understand all the charges and everything that can happen. But I'm just going to tell you from a counselor's point of view, if we'll take what we've been going through over the last 6 months down on Main Street, Union, and incredible vandalism, people shooting out windows, going crazy, breaking into businesses. So as a counselor, we get complaints from the constituents that the heck's going on, especially the business owners, the Downtown Business Association and things like that. We reach out to our administration. Our administration says, well, we arrested one guy, we took him down to jail and they wouldn't hold him. Or we made a phone call and they wouldn't take him. So we had to write a ticket and they had to leave. All I'm looking for and all I've been looking for since 2018 is some policy that says, this is what it costs. This is what you guys are going to pay for inmates to be booked into the Pueblo County Jail, and that you're willing to take jailable offenses. The public safety part where you made the deal that if it's a public safety issue or whatever, I mean, how do you define public safety? Is public safety when somebody's breaking into businesses and stealing people blind, ransacking our community? Is that a public safety issue?
Absolutely. And I
Or
think
is
that,
is it just when they're carrying knives and guns and things like that? And I'm sure you're aware of this. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir probably on most of this. But I feel like we're totally handcuffed, for lack of a better term, totally handcuffed on, you know, what the police can take to jail and what the police can't take to jail. They have to call for permission. If they don't get permission, then they have to do something else or whatever. And in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, and I've said it many times, I don't think there's a relationship between the sheriff's office and the city of Pueblo when it comes to making this stuff happen and to helping us in cleaning up the streets and putting these offenders that are just running amok in jail. And I get it. Maybe it's on the way they're charged or whatever. I get those nuances in who can be put in jail. But I literally hear from the administration that that's not the case, that they're where you have to call for permission. If they're not allowed, you get what I'm saying, and you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, Mr. Ayler.
Go ahead.
If I may address that. So we have not turned them away when we're called. That process, I have to have a gatekeeper, which is either the operations captain in the jail or the bureau chief of our detention bureau. We've not turned one away. And going backwards when you're talking about criminal mischief and theft, people that are getting peeled or stolen from, we address that. I addressed that in I think it was a January or February. I think it was January where we opened that back up, where even though it's a misdemeanor, they can now be booked into the Pueblo County Jail. So those are tools that are in not only the Pueblo police officers' belt, but for my deputies, for the Colorado State Patrol, and all the other agencies that are feeding into the Pueblo County Jail. I did bring a snapshot, and I wasn't able to get it in the slide deck, and I'm happy to share this with council. I don't know if this will display it or not. I might need some technical support, Clyde. But this gives a snapshot of who's in the jail, what the classifications of crimes are. I have a date and time snapshot, and this will be updated later this week. But you can kind of see in the top left corner, these are the agencies that inmates that were arrested from January to February 13th. Pueblo Police Department accounted for 242 arrests, followed by the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office at 197, and then it just goes down from there. Right below that is what was booked on that date of February 12th, and it's very similar. The Pueblo Police Department had booked 9 on that particular date and time. In time. And the Sheriff's Office booked 6 with the parole booking 1. As we go over to the top right in the middle, I guess you could say, this is the inmate count by arresting agencies. What was from January again to February 13th. The Pueblo Police Department had 102 inmates that were there on the PSF is referring to felonies. 47 of them were there on misdemeanors, and 3 were traffic related. And then if you look at is my finger showing up on that? I'm sorry. Maybe I'll get my hand off of it, unless it's helpful. Oh, okay. We accounted for 92 felonies in custody, 40 misdemeanors, and 1 that was there on a traffic-related offense. Again, the agencies, if we go below, who was feeding into the arresting agencies, this was one category we were a little bit higher on, or I'm sorry, it's consistent where the Pueblo Police had 125 and we had 98. Misdemeanor arrests by the agency, Pueblo Police Department had 78 misdemeanor arrests. These are state charges that have corollary, I guess kind of tongue twisted there a little bit, charges that were under the municipal code, but they use state charges to book them in on, where we had 65. Again, I will share this with council when we get an updated one later this week, because this will be updated and it'll give you a snapshot from January to whatever date and time our crime analyst is able to use that and then go back from there. But hopefully that's helpful. So, you know, I mean, this is where we're helping. The Pueblo Police Department is our highest feeding agency for criminal offenses in the city of Pueblo.
But it should be. I mean, 70% of the population lives in the city of Pueblo, so the numbers should be maybe even higher. You know, a better graph would be is who didn't get booked. That would be a better graph to see if there was any that didn't get booked.
Council Boston.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, you said if there's somebody that got picked up and it's a state charge, you'll book them, but what's the difference if it's a city charge or a state charge? Like, why is there a difference between that?
Well, some of them are lesser for a municipal violation, where if there's a state charge, we can take them in on some of those misdemeanors that I identified early on in the PowerPoint.
So even if it's the same act, you'll take them on a state charge, but not a city charge?
Under those categories that I identified, yes.
Council Latino.
Yeah, I just, Sheriff, I was just gonna ask, you said you had 404 that are currently incarcerated,
444.
444. And it's, the capability of the jail is 509?
Correct.
Okay,
In the new jail, it'll be 680 beds.
680 beds, so so we're gonna have more beds, which means basically that these characters that are on the street raising hell and creating havoc and doing the things that Councilman Aliff alluded to, if we catch them, they can go to jail. We don't have to worry about them not having a place, because I've been concerned for some reason, maybe it's just my naivety, that we didn't have space. We didn't have space for the prison population, the potential jail population, for the potential jail population. So I was thinking, well, they got that prison down in Huerfano County that's vacant, you know, so that's something we can do, and the judge can travel down there and hear the cases, but that's a whole nother story. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. That helps us, because we have had problems as relates to, as to Councilman Aliff's remarks with vandalism, theft. It's just been unbelievable, especially down here on Union and on Santa Fe. These merchants are just, you know, it's killing them, you know, and obviously it's going to cost them in terms of insurance and other kinds of things. And that's not what this community is about. That's not the community that I was raised in, you know, or the others here that are raised in this city. So thank you. I appreciate your remarks and your report.
Council Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Sheriff, for coming here. I have a couple questions. So when you say that the new jail is going to be 680 beds, so right now, in the current jail, we have 10 uni beds. In the new jail, even though it's increasing to 680, how many uni beds are we going to have there?
30.
30.
Mhm.
Okay. And is that in a formal agreement?
It hasn't been formalized yet, not that I'm aware of. It's still in process. I'd have to get with our county attorney, but I don't believe it has been formalized.
Okay, but it will be formalized.
Yes.
And so I'm a little bit more familiar in the youth juvenile justice system. So at YOS, when the 10th JD is out of beds, they can borrow beds from other JDs there. Is there a similar system here?
Well, the only agencies that we feed are the Pueblo Police Department, Colorado State Patrol, State Parks, and Parole. I did increase the bed count for parole as well as to address some of the folks that were on parole as part of that memorandum that I shared with you all as another way to address the criminal element and crimes that are occurring within the city.
Let me re-ask my
And
question,
county.
Sheriff. So for the other, I guess, surrounding like county jails, is it a thing where we can borrow beds from other county jails, like the other JDs do at YOS?
So if it's run by the sheriffs, we have agreements. We do have inmates that we hold at other facilities if
Okay.
they're in inmate management problem. If they're co-defendants and we need to separate them, we can, we trade inmates with other sheriff's offices all the time. If it's a safety issue, like I said, co-defendants, we're holding some for Arapahoe, they're holding some for us.
Okay.
Where we're doing that. I hope that answers your question.
Council Flores.
Yeah, Dave, thanks for that report. I learned a lot. Part of the cost that you guys incurred, and I took the liberty this weekend of reviewing the statute. And I don't think people realize that, you are a statutory elected official and you have to live by a statute that wasn't created by any city or county. It was created by the state of Colorado. So what does it mean when when the statute said that you are in charge of a felony jail? It almost appears as though you're restricted. But I'm assuming that somewhere you have a little bit of latitude to help cities in the municipal area.
We
But-
do. Yeah, to answer your question, Counselor, we do have some latitude with respect to misdemeanors, but we're subject to what the state already has set. So if they said that this misdemeanor is PR bondable, meaning that they can get out on a personal recognizance, then we can't hold them. I would be false imprisoning people if I just wanted to do it, if I want to do a 4-hour hold and I kept them longer than what it takes my staff to process them, I would be in violation of the law, and I won't do that.
The other question had to do with, the cost of housing an inmate is expensive. But one of your duties is to transport these people, whether it's to Centennial in Colorado Springs or some other facility in Denver. You guys are responsible for doing that. I'm assuming that you don't have a lot of need to transport misdemeanor individuals. It's a much shorter sentence, but they just walk out of the jail, or are you required to transport them to the judicial building or municipal court if they have to be heard?
Well, if they're convicted on or
right.
being on state charges, then yes. But we have a pretty elaborate system with municipal courts where we can transport them, and they can appear a lot of the time on much like a Zoom meeting where they can be advised. So those type of transportation costs aren't incurred, but we do work with the public police as well if there's transports that are needed for municipal inmates.
Just kind of changing the subject a little bit. I did not realize that the statute refers to you as a fire warden. And that just seems like a huge task there. I'm assuming that the responsibility is limited to forest fires or
Wildland fires.
wildlife fires. I mean, that type of thing. If you had a wildfire that was endangering homes, can you put out the fire there? I mean, the home could be a problem to begin with. So how do you deal with that? I know that you have joint agreements with other fire districts to help, but how is that coordinated?
So we have a very good relationship with our county fire chiefs and the city fire chief as well. Recently, we did have a fire, that exact scenario that you were talking about, and our folks worked with the city. If you recall, the mayor and I did a joint press conference on this, and there were multiple fires in the community that day. I do have a full service wildland fire department that responds, but it's limited resources, so we pool all those. It's pretty elaborate and pretty interesting because we have what we call strike teams that they take the call for a certain period of time, and if we have a spark incident that happens, then the strike team's activated. We activate the EOC and we coordinate our efforts and what resources that we may need. One of the things as the fire warden, if it starts to exceed, let's say it happened in the city, then there would have to be a delegation of authority to me. And once it exceeded what my resources were, then I have to do a delegation of authority and turn that fire over to the state. Still our fire, but they're responsible for the incident management at that point.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
we're gonna go real quick to Councilor Martinez, then Councilor Maestri, and then Councilor Latino.
Sorry, I have one more question, Sheriff. Can you remind me how much we pay for the beds?
$45 a day.
And how much does parole pay?
55, 70 something. I
Okay.
don't remember exactly. I think it's in the PowerPoint.
Thanks.
Councilor Maestri, you have anything?
I started when I first got on council, I met with Commissioner Ortiz at the time and the sheriff and Judge Sykes when she was Judge Sykes, and President Graham had met with us. We had discussed some things, and coming into it, it was almost like there was we didn't have a contract with Sheriff Taylor at this time. We hadn't had one for years, but there was this implication that it was because of animosity. And it took me a while to get into it and talk to everyone. And I feel like even lately, it's just about, the sheriff just doesn't want to give us a contract. But that's not what I'm seeing at all. I saw that, when we talked about the new jail, that we were going to put a contract in place at that time. But I don't feel like there's any animosity involved, although I still kind of hear that in tones of voices when we have the discussion. But what I've learned is that the sheriff has a job and a specialty in law that, each law enforcement agency has some specialty to it. And, you know, I'm seeing that they're just following the statutory requirements. And I don't know if this is a good example or not, Sheriff Lucero, but, or maybe something that maybe people can understand is that you're undergoing the same things as far as a corrections facility as the officers have undergone on the streets of what they can or cannot do when they're making arrests. You've also been limited at your capacity as far as running the facility. Is that correct?
That's correct, Counselor. There's those challenges that we do face, both the Pueblo Police Department, the Pueblo County Sheriff's Office, and all of our law enforcement partners in this community. Things that certainly I've identified as substance use issues, mental health issues. The jail's not just my jail, but the jails across the state of Colorado have become mental institutions. And I have 21-year-old deputies, 25-year-old deputies that their focus is law enforcement, but now they've been asked to be mental health workers. So it's a bigger problem that I continue to go up to the Capitol to testify and fight for. I'm working on a diversion program when we're going to do the repurposing of the dormitory, because the plan right now is the tower is going to come down. But we will still have that expansion that happened in 2007 that'll be available. So that space is available as well, and what that's going to look like. I do have plans working with Commissioner Swearingen on repurposing the second floor, because when that dormitory was constructed, Mr. Gomez, you'd remember this, that it was designed so that there could be a second floor that was put on that. And that's really what my plans are for the diversion. But, we see things such as detox that we could use more beds for here in this community. And of course, mental illness.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that you undergo limitations just like the officers arresting on the street as far as holding people within your jail. That's what I was learning through this whole process. And
Yes, that's correct.
and that's really what because I think law abiding citizens think people should when the people get arrested, they should go to jail, but it doesn't work it's not that easy, because you are limited to what you can do in your facility, as well as what officers can do on the streets
That's correct.
under today's legislation. Okay, thank you.
Council Latino.
Thank you. Sheriff, are you short deputies?
I am.
Okay.
I'm about 40 short in the detention. That's another variable and a factor that I have to consider for staff safety,
Okay.
40 deputy short on the detention side and 6 on the patrol function.
Okay. And the Pueblo Police Department is short. How many now are we short? How many?
50 officers.
50 officers. Okay. Obviously, you know one of your colleagues, Sheriff Richard Smith from Weld County. Are you familiar with the program they're doing up there?
You had mentioned it to me, I think, at a dinner.
Yeah.
Counselor, I haven't had a chance to visit with
Okay.
him
Well,
about.
I'm hoping to get up there to meet him. Maybe we can all go up there, but they were short deputies and they have what they call now a posse that they've sworn in, and obviously they have to pass background clearance and they get some training. Pueblo needs to come into the 21st century and again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic or mean or disrespectful in any way, but when we're short officers and deputies, and we're talking about safety and security, and we have some of the things happening here and I'm sure they're happening in other places. We need to take a look at what they're doing in other places and try to meet with those folks, see what it is that they're doing and maybe adopt what it is that they're doing and not show that lack of that pride that we have of not being willing to look at other places and what they're doing. So I've been in touch with him and I'm planning to go up there and meet with him sometime. And he's short deputies, but he's sworn these people in and we've talked and what they're doing. I just wanted to know what your perception was of that. And again, it's teamwork, man. We have to work as a team. The police department, the sheriff's department, the city council, the county commissioners, and this community. It has to be a team effort. And so I just wanted to know, I think what I've heard from him and that this has been a really big win for his community in terms of what he's tried to do and some of the things that have happened. So I'm hoping that we as a community can maybe sit down, talk, and maybe go up and see what they're doing up there. And maybe we can work as a team and adopt some of those things that they're doing in other places. That's all. Thank you. And thanks for all that you do. You guys and gals are great in the sheriff's department as our guys and gals are great in the police department. So thank you.
Let me jump in here, Joe. So 40.7%, if I did my math right, is what you guys are eating every year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the crux of the problem is I think we have a city attorney who was the municipal judge, had a lot of misdemeanors, and we have you guys over here. So I'm trying to figure, are we ever going to be able to handle this with frank discussions, seeing how we can work with each other? Do you think the relationship is strong? Does it need work? What's your opinion?
You know, going back to what I had started with is I have a great working relationship with the chief of police, the mayor as well. She could pick up the phone and call me. I'm comfortable picking up the phone and calling her if we need to work collaboratively, as do I with all of city council. You know, I'm your sheriff. So if you're hearing it from the constituents and you want me, Mr. Aliff, to hear what you're having to listen to, please share that with me. And then, you know, I that's why I said I welcome the opportunity to come before council tonight, because we are doing things to help our partners in the city of Pueblo by taking those folks that are committing vandalism, those folks that are committing thefts, firearms offenses, to improve our public safety.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we're on the right track.
Let the mayor respond.
Thanks. Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Chair. I did have one question, Sheriff. On the presentation that I received from your office earlier today, it had 2 different options. I think that they were maybe for the city council. Option 1 and option 2 with dollar amounts and what it potentially cost the city if this is the route that we wanted to go. So I was curious about that, number 1. And then I was also curious about all of our municipal offenses are arrestable offenses. So when Chief Noller and I came to you with the same concerns that President Aliff shared and Councilor Latino shared about the crime that's going on in the downtown area with trespass, theft from merchant, disorderly conduct, and fining property damage over $500, it didn't seem like you had the appetite at the time to take these offenses if they were not state charges. But the reality is that some of these could be state charges. They're the same crime, but they don't face the same penalty when it comes to whether or not you're going to take them into the jail. So I think that that's really what we're having a hard time understanding is they commit the same crime, but if it's a municipal offense, they're not going to jail. If it can be filed under a state charge, the same crime, you're going to take them. So I'm curious about the 2 options that you had presented that you sent to my office, if those are viable options to city council. I know that when we spoke, previously, before we stated that, we know city council, they want people to pay the consequence when they break the law. And so I would assume the city council would be willing to pay the $5 extra per person per day to put people in jail if you're gonna accept these new municipal arrests, if that was what this was intended for.
Okay, and let me, thank you for the question, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify that this was an updated slide deck because those were errors that were in there. It was something that I was considering that didn't get revised, so I pulled those back out before this presentation. So I think we still need to have conversations on what that looks like. I'm taking the lead from what I had learned from Sheriff Smith in La Plata County. There's a company that does the study of what the actual costs are for housing municipal inmates. And this company that he contracted with said that that rate was around $200 a day per inmate. So before I would be willing to do any of that, I would want to commission a study to see what the actual costs would be. Under the state charge, I have to take them. I don't have a choice. But I do get a choice with a municipal, and I had to identify with my staffing shortages, with what's available as far as resource wise, what I was able to, or how I was able to accommodate, or at least meet part of your initial request from our, I think it was a December 6th meeting. So that's how I arrived at where I arrived.
Okay, but just to clarify, there's been no additional offenses that you're willing to take because you just said that you have to take state offenses regardless. So there's no new municipal offenses that the sheriff is willing to take in.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, does council have anything else? We're going to run behind a little bit of time.
I
Sheriff-
have one more question,
Oh,
Counselor
oh,
Gomez.
Sorry, Council Masher, go ahead.
Sheriff, could that be resolved by just the way the charges are written rather than under a municipal offense if that officer charges under a state offense?
Counselor, could you ask your question again? I want to make sure I understand what you're asking me.
Well, you're saying that if they're state charges versus municipal charges, can't that just be clarified by the officer writing the charge? When he writes his charge or his report, that's not I honestly don't know how they do it, but whatever they're doing in their report, in their charging, wouldn't they just, rather than charge it a municipal offense, just charge it a state offense and then you have no choice?
Yeah,
but
that's
to
correct.
take it?
That's correct. Well, it would be an affidavit on state charges. You're required to file an affidavit, which is a little bit more work than just writing a ticket. But on the ones that I identified, again, the theft, the firearms charges, the criminal mischief, all the things that Councilor Aliff was alluding to earlier, as well as Mr. Latino, those things I did open up. The ones I didn't take was disorderly with fighting on a municipal charge. Again, doing my research on this and looking at it, there were some issues that I found with the municipal ordinances. Some had sunset January of 2025 that make it less. And looking at city charter and reading it, deciphering what it's saying, it encourages that the people are held at the lowest level possible. So back to the mayor's point, that if council has spoken that they want to have that consequences. I think it has to start with respectfully, I think it has to start with the city ordinances and the charter. I don't have a choice to, personally, what I like to see immediate consequences, yes. I can't as the sheriff. That's not my role. My role is to get, as is the role of an arrest, is to get that person started in the criminal justice system. And if they're eligible for a bond, be it a PR or they can put up a cash bond or a surety bond, then that's our system of justice. Did that answer your question?
Well, it still is a little confusing when you in your response. What I'm trying to clarify here is the state charges you can hold because they have more, I don't know, this is my day-to-day, more teeth in them in comparison to the municipal charges. But we do have the municipal charge ones that you have accepted is because we've recently brought those and updated those ordinances with the teeth in necessary to keep the ones that you said we could keep. Is that what I'm hearing, or is that how it came down to this?
Well, so I think some of the municipal charges have more teeth than what the state charges have. There's some that do hold more teeth. Again, but I have to weigh the liability, and but they can always use the corollary state charge if it's applicable and they need to take somebody into custody.
Okay.
It's not all misdemeanor charges. Like, as I said early on, we were a felony only jail. But for our conversations with the mayor, other council members, looking at, what my staffing is, what my abilities are, countywide, those were the ones that I was able to identify and work toward. Now, I think it's still going to be a work in progress, right? As we look going forward to this new jail. I'm doing this experiment right now with opening up those misdemeanor charges, and I'm evaluating them. My population hasn't risen a whole lot since we opened them up. Staff is putting together the numbers to see if the police department has brought in anybody on those criminal mischief charges or the theft charges, but we'll continue to always evaluate it. And I want to be a good partner with the city of Pueblo. It's part of my responsibility too.
All right, thank you. We're gonna move on to one last question and then we're gonna
It's the
close.
last question, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
The back and forth that Mayor Graham had with you, the sheriff, I didn't follow that. Can you say it in a different way?
Well, okay, yeah. Thank you for the question. So we met originally, I believe it was December 6th, thereabouts, early December. Or actually, she sent me a letter, her and Chief Noller sent me a letter requesting that there was the firearms charges. And this is in what I had individually sent to.
Got that, yeah.
Okay. So I had reviewed it, looked at what I could do. And I actually had a meeting, I believe the first part of January is when we had our meeting. But the day before, the weekend before, I issued a memo to all of our law enforcement partners that said, look, this is what we're going to be willing to take in the Pueblo County Jail. We're going to expand some misdemeanor crimes where we hadn't before. Then I met with the mayor. We had a follow-up meeting, and the chief had requested some additional charges be taken, such as I believe it was disorderly conduct with fighting, trespass, theft, criminal mischief. And so I sharpened my pencil, went back and said, okay, what can we really do? And that example that I shared early on with the person that commits the theft at Lowe's and then or Home Depot and then goes to Lowe's stuck out in my brain, as well as the vandalism that we saw down on Union. So that's when I added those additional misdemeanor charges to be accepted.
Okay, but not the extensive list that Chief Noller requested.
Correct.
Okay, I'm following. Thank you.
okay, I promise this is the last question. I really mean it this time.
So here, I just want to make a statement. This is where it becomes a problem, in my opinion. The problem is that you just made a statement that if you file it as a state offense, it's the same offense, right? But if you file it if the police department files it as a state offense, you have to take them. Okay? But because it's not filed as a state offense, it's a jailable municipal offense, you choose not to take them. So it's the same crime, but yet you have the discretion you have to take them or you don't take them. So as a community member, not even a city councilor, as a community member, that seems wishy-washy to me. It's a crime. Our society is set up, if you do a crime, you should have to have some consequence. And we're choosing which consequence, whether it's a state offense or whether it's a municipal offense. The reality of it is it's an offense. So not taking that municipal offense is, it makes no sense for a layman. For a layman sitting here going, that's crazy. It's crazy if the police department does an extra affidavit, you have to take them. And then on the other hand, you're saying you want to be a partner, you want to be a part of this, you're our sheriff,
Yes, sir.
it's our jail. But why does the police department have to jump through hoops to get a criminal put in jail? I mean, I don't expect you to answer it. I'm just saying, I'm giving you a perception of how this feels. I don't think that anything is solved or that we're moving towards any agreements or anything else like that. I think it's just the status quo. The police department takes somebody down there, they may, even though it's a jailable offense, they may get put in jail, they may not. And that's, to me, that's disturbing.
Last comment?
Yeah, I just think we have to continue to work together as we solve these issues, as we look at agreements and as we move toward the new jail. But there are mechanisms that are in place that I truly want to evaluate and help. And just to clarify, it's not apples to apples because there's only certain misdemeanor crimes that we would take on state charges. Any felony charge I am required to take. So I just wanted to have that clarifying point.
And clarification though, the municipal offenses are jailable offenses, whether you choose to do it or not. They're jailable offenses.
Well, that's not a yes or no question.
Okay.
It varies on what the particular municipal crime charge could be.
Well, does the police department bring down a suspect or somebody to put in jail because it's not a jailable offense? Does that happen?
Well, we have seen that in the past where yeah, that does happen.
Okay, fair enough.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I want to thank you for your patience. Under Sheriff Bryant, I want to thank you guys for coming out and explaining all to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda, unless we want to take a break, we good? Next up on the agenda is the Pueblo County Historical Society Heritage Museum. We have Pamela Jacobson, the president of the PCHS, and Dr. John Wendt, executive director, PCHS. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. I'm Pamela Jacobson, the president of the Pueblo County Historic Society and Heritage Museum. And this is Dr. John Wendt, our executive director. Approximately 30 years ago, in 1995, the 7 people who were sitting in your seats as city council members came to the Pueblo County Historical Society and asked us to bring our museum into the B Street building. Our established museum at that time was in the basement of the Vail Hotel. The city invited us to move into the museum and set up shop, knowing that it would be a certain draw for pedestrian and tourist traffic. Since that time, the museum and the society have flourished, amassing a robust collection of artifacts and records. We've grown the membership. We've established partnerships with a number of other local organizations. The Broadhead Research Library has grown to be a very popular location for our patrons in the community to research their heritage, to search for information about Pueblo, and to gather information for articles and historic reference books. The Pueblo lore editor and his writing staff use the research library as a base for their writing and editing of the monthly magazine. Our intern program provides opportunities for students from CSU Pueblo, Pueblo Community College, and the local area high schools to earn college credit while expanding their knowledge of local history. The value of the Pueblo County Historical Society and Heritage Museum to our community of Pueblo is immeasurable. In 2024, the Museum Board of Directors came to the Historical Society and requested that we accept the responsibility of running the museum. As of January 1st, we are the Historical Society and Heritage Museum, one organization. We are an extremely stable organization with a board of 19 members who meet monthly in the Heritage Room. Our board's attendance is 99%, with all members being very active and taking on active roles. Many of our members are here tonight. 2 weeks ago here at City Council, when it was announced that the B Street building would be sold, one of you asked, "What's behind all those garage doors?" John is going to tell you and show you exactly what's behind those garage doors.
All right, well, thank you, Pam. So the intention of this is essentially informational to demonstrate to City Council what exactly we do with all of that space at 201 West B Street. Here are a couple images showcasing the interior of the museum, the interior of our research library on the second floor, and the Heritage Room on the first floor. And I will get into those in a moment. So first off, who are we? We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We've been in operation since 1975. We have, as of this month, roughly 745 dues-paying members. We have 9 constituent organizations with large and varied memberships that all use our space as a mailing address, as a headquarters, and as a space to conduct their own meetings. We have, as of this month, logged over 4,350 volunteer hours within our organization. That's a lot of time from a lot of people. In terms of collections, we're looking at roughly 35,000 individual artifacts, objects, and records, roughly 6,000 artifacts spanning the Paleolithic era to modern day within our museum's holdings. And at the Edward Broadhead Library upstairs, we have roughly 20,000 original photographs and 1,500 library books, along with 500 oral histories collected from our community, and over 400 original maps and blueprints. But that put together, that is a large amount of history that we are essentially tasked with providing stewardship over and protection. Now, what we provide, I've kind of already hit this, but I'll hit it again for you. Pueblo Heritage Museum is a public-facing educational platform that we use to interact with the community, predominantly through obviously people coming in off the street and paying a small admission charge to tour the museum, but we also provide private tours and school tours using that space. And many of the exhibits, many of which are actually generated by our constituent organizations for that space. We also have the research library, as Pam said, a place where our PCHS members and visiting researchers can conduct independent research in furtherance of publications that we facilitate, whether it be our monthly Pueblo Lore, which we'll get to in a second, or original historical manuscripts, of which we have published 32 to date. Let's see, and then we'll hit our umbrella for 9 local organizations in a little bit, and our Heritage Room, which is a revenue generator and space for meetings, both for our own organization and our constituent organizations, and a space to conduct free talks and public events, as well as a local arts gallery for independent artists in the community. So let's hit the museum. So just a few more images of the museum as it currently exists. It's approximately 10,000 square feet of exhibit space in which we have 3,500 artifacts on display. Many of these range from things as small as arrowheads to as large as fully restored Studebaker 19th century carriages, or of course, Lucky the horse, as well as number of saddles, along with roughly 3,000 more artifacts in offsite storage that we would love to display, but can't at the current time. One of the other things we do with this is our private and school tours, in which we will take students through and give them guided tours. Usually we will coordinate ahead with the various school groups, whether it's public or private, so that way our tours can better coordinate with these teachers and augment their curriculum. For schools that maybe can't get a full field trip put together, we have a program called the Trunk Talks, in which you see at the bottom left of our slide here, we have our cowboy trunk on display, in which it's basically a suitcase full of artifacts from our collection, along with a program that has been written up that we can give to teachers in advance as part of their curriculum. And this allows us a little bit more flexibility with the schools. We will come to the classrooms and provide essentially an hour to an hour and a half long talk related to certain topics. And we have trunk talks on the 1921 flood, Hispanic heritage in Pueblo County, obviously cowboys, and a number of other topics that I could hit on if you're interested. Let's move to our research library. So here we have images of the library proper. So our library specializes predominantly in Southeastern Colorado history, with an emphasis on Pueblo County and the city of Pueblo. We have subject matter experts who are very gracious with their time to volunteer and help researchers coming in from the public, from our own membership, from membership of our other organizations. We also provide in-house publishing platforms for this historical research. Obviously, we don't take complete ownership of it by any stretch. You are more than welcome to come in, do research, and publish it at your leisure. However, for especially our membership and various other organizations, we will provide, again, publishing in the form of full-length historical manuscripts. Like I said before, we've published about 32 to date. And our Pueblo Lore, which is our roughly 28 to 30 page independent historical journal that we publish every month and send to our readership. We have published this without stop for the past 50 years. Just this past year to date, we have printed 2,235 lores and shipped them nationally to our membership, as well as provided them to the public for a small fee. Last year, and this will be our slide down at the bottom left, last year we received a $20,000 grant to aid in the procurement of a professional grade digitization machine, which is that big scanner with the Z on it that you see there. That is, as we understand it, the most cutting edge digitization object in Pueblo. CSUP does not have the capabilities we have to essentially use that machine to, at a professional level, digitize records, books, maps, photographs, and provide that service to our membership and the public. That is a serious piece of machinery that we invested in, and we're very proud of it. So Pam's going to take the umbrella for our local organizations.
We have several local organizations, particularly the Fray Angelica Chavez chapter, which is the local genealogical society, the Pueblo Archaeological and Historical Society, the Goodnight Barn, the Lions Club, the Pueblo Railroad Foundation, the Pueblo German American Club, the Conservancy District, the Celtic Club, and the Pueblo Board of Waterworks. All of these organizations meet monthly, and many of them hold their monthly meetings in our Heritage Room at 201 West B Street. Several of them also have a lot of historical records and artifacts that they keep, and we provide them storage facilities upstairs behind our research library to keep all of their information and paperwork that they have.
And so on the topic of the Heritage Room, so this is a 1,400 square foot room used for public events and meetings, rentals, and as a community art gallery. Just a quick note on the storage spaces. So for example, in that picture at the bottom left there, the big cabinets in the background are a research library for the Fray Angelica organization that they essentially have entrusted us to maintain for them within that room. They have hundreds of more books also stored throughout the building. So when I talk about our collections, I'm just talking about ours. There are hundreds of other objects and books that are stored within this building that are not just the Pueblo County Historical Society's in our personal collections or that have been donated to us.
We have hundreds of artifacts and collections that people have brought in and loaned to us or even, or given to the Historical Society in order to be a part of the exhibits in the museums.
And so while I'm still on the Heritage Room topic, I wanted to give a quick example that we had recently. The Pueblo Archaeological and Historical Society just 2 weeks ago now, on March 6th, had a free public event held on a Thursday night in which they asked a professor from CSU's main campus up in Fort Collins to come down, and he gave a talk to roughly 35 members of the public, as well as another 25 that had joined on Zoom. So that's 60 people. I mean, the room only sits 68 total. So had they all been there in person, that would have been a packed house. Even still, it's very good numbers for a free event on a Thursday night, all simply to come and talk about history, archaeology. That is, we as an organization were able to open that space for them, provide the internet connectivity, the projectors, the microphones, and what have you, in order to see that that event goes off without a hitch. One of the final things we use this room for is revenue generation. We charge for rentals of it, in which we have the room up in the corner there decorated for an engagement party. But that's one of the few ways we generate revenue as a nonprofit organization to then provide spaces like this for the community at a fairly low cost. Okay, so this is sort of our sketch of the immediate, near, and long-term plans, assuming there is no immediate changes to this based on the city council or city selling the building. So in our immediate plan, we are looking to continue accessioning artifacts and basically completing this merger that we've begun with the museum to make sure we have everything fully accounted for. We're allowed to do our due diligence. Most of that would be informing many of the people who loaned artifacts to the museum that we are now taking control of that. And if they want it, they're more than happy to come and collect those artifacts if we can prove that it was theirs in the first place. The other major thing we're attempting to do is continue the extant programs we already have. So this would be continuing school tours, continuing tours for various senior citizen groups or special needs groups that utilize our museum on a regular basis, continue doing trunk talks, and continue using the Heritage Room as a space for the public. In the near term, we're hoping to expand our school programs to...
Disregard that.
Thanks. Continue expanding our public-facing free events and continue creating new Pueblo history-focused exhibits, by which we would like to do, but it's going to be difficult if we suddenly have to pack everything up and leave. Finally, long-term would be introducing a rotating exhibit space, rolling out collection strategies for preserving more artifacts and records, and focusing them more on Pueblo history or various community topics based on what people have and would be willing to donate. And then finally, expanding our internship program, which I should say, both our interns are here in attendance tonight too. So consequences, if the current plan as it was demonstrated to council 2 weeks ago is to go through, which said, just to jog y'all's memory, was to sell the building for an attempted, stating that it would go for roughly $2 million in profit. Well, this action would have dire consequences, not just on our organization, but all of our community organizations that rely on us. And I'll let Pam talk to a little bit of the constituent organizations.
Our member organizations would not be able to meet anymore. They wouldn't be able to store their materials, their artifacts, their information, and their records. They wouldn't have a place to come to. We wouldn't be able to provide the space for them if we weren't there. That just wouldn't happen. And it involves a lot of community people, many, many, many community people.
And then, so moving on to the expensive relocation, this wouldn't be as simple as calling up two guys in a truck or college hunks and saying, toss everything in the back, let's go somewhere else. We're talking about moving significant, thousands of artifacts that are extremely fragile. And in order to do it with a proper and frankly ethical bent, especially in regards to our responsibilities to those who have loaned these artifacts to us, we're looking at a roughly $250,000 expense to move this to a location that we don't have right now and wouldn't know what that would be. Those kind of question marks and uncertainties are only going to drive price and cost and expense on us up. One of the other aspects is our inability to continue research and digitization publication services. Obviously, we are generating history every month. We are publishing historical research that is conducted on the premises and putting it out to the public every single month. Relocation would have us halt that entirely. And for an unknown amount of time, essentially, unless we were given some sort of a timeline on this move. Finally, the potential destruction of loaned and donated artifacts in a relocation. Again, like I said, this would be an extremely expensive process. And one of the other things that potentially endangers this is the fact that our current lease to the city is on a month-to-month basis, which means council could give us 30 days to vacate the premises. 30 days is not enough time to do this and preserve the integrity of our collection. Things will be damaged if we are doing it on a 30-day.
We have artifacts from the Paleolithic age. That's hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Yeah, prehistoric.
And you have to package them so carefully, and you can't put them in a box. You really have to, there's a certain procedure that you have to follow in order to preserve them.
Correct. And if we were to say, apply for grants to help with the relocation, we would have to assure people who are giving us grants that we are doing it according to various standards put out by state, national institutions on moving these kind of artifacts. That's, again, not something you can do in a 30-day timeframe. So
We also would need to contact all those people who have loaned things to the museum and ask them, do you want it back? Or is it okay if we pack it up and take it with us wherever we're going? Some people may want their things back and not want it to be moved. And we have to consider all of that as well.
And so in closing, a sale of 201 West would do irreparable harm to the history of Pueblo and signal to the voters that the city does not value preserving the history and heritage that you have entrusted us to preserve and maintain. And so with that, please come and tour. Please come and see what we are doing here. I will drop everything I'm doing to come walk you guys around this museum and show you what is behind those garage doors. Thank you.
Before we move on to President Mark Aliff, I want to just say something real quickly because I've been counting the number of folks here. I want to commend the 20 members for showing up, being respectful and setting an example of decorum for this chamber. We're not used to it, to be honest with you. 20 members constitutes a serious representation of your membership, and I want to thank you guys for showing up. Mr. Mark Aliff, President of Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, thank you for that report. That's what a great organization. Hey, when I was young, I couldn't wait to get the Rolling Stone. I read Rolling Stone. Oh man, I couldn't wait for it to come out. Now I can't wait to get the lore.
Get the lore.
It's amazing how you go through those stages, right? But the lore is cool, let me tell you. Yeah, I understand. I understand exactly what you guys are talking about, exactly why you're here, and it's such an early stage of any kind of talks or whatever that quite frankly, city council, or I know myself, I haven't been involved in any kind of conversation about selling the building. I know that it was brought up from the presentation a couple of weeks ago, and you saw that. But obviously, anything that we do as a council, we have to be very cognizant of the effect that it has on our constituents. And
we were shocked to hear that at that point. I mean, we had not heard any information about that prior to that meeting. And I think we were all in shock when we heard the building would be put up for sale.
Well, you know, life goes on, right? And things happen. You're on a month-to-month lease. What is your lease payment to the city?
I believe it's $10 a month.
$10 a month?
Mhm.
You got a good deal on that.
We do have a
that-
good deal.
That
It's,
deal
it's a
there.
great location for a museum.
Well, and again,
Yes.
it was a good deal that the city asked us to take over that space, or asked the museum originally to take.
And that
over
was
the
50 years ago?
30,
30 years ago.
In
30 years ago.
1990s.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate all that you guys do, and I'm sure we'll see you again and have many conversations, and keep that lore coming, please.
Counselor Flores.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is new to me as far as changing the arrangement. And I know that it was brought up at one of our meetings, but I'm not sure that we've had much more information. But let me put this in context and think, as I speak, tell me if I'm correct or not. What you have in that museum, if somebody were to ask you the question, who owns all those artifacts? Who owns all those books and maps? The original copies of the lore, all of that.
The
How would
historical,
you answer? No, but how would
Oh.
you answer who owns?
the Historical Society owns the books, the lore, everything in the research library. The Historical Society owns the majority of the artifacts in the museum. Other community individuals own some of the artifacts in the museum that they have loaned or given to the museum.
I would, I guess I'm looking at this differently because you guys are entrusted in protecting
Correct.
these
Mhm.
items. And I think who you're doing it for is the citizens
community.
of this community.
Exactly.
And I'm sure, I mean, if you go back to when the city council at that point wanted you to move from the Vale Hotel,
Mhm.
and I've known about your organization for a long time because I had a relationship with you. But you're the caretakers of the history of this community.
Exactly.
You're not in the business of making money. You charge so little that it probably doesn't even cover the utilities, so
Right.
whatever you collect.
Mhm.
But I'd like to believe that it's amazing how many volunteer hours you have and how many people are dedicated in saving our history. I love the lore. It's like, and we get it in this packet like once a month.
Mhm.
And every time I come up here, I'm looking for it, for a
Mhm.
copy. And then, but again, I think we need to have this discussion
Mhm.
and we need to put it in the right context.
Yes.
Well, and
you're
that's why
not-
we wanted to
Yeah.
schedule this as soon as we could. So that way, in these early phases of this
Right.
discussion, you guys have a clear vision of just how many stakeholders we have, how many man hours are being put in that building. That is not, on the other side of the wall from city's HR and payroll. So.
Right. Anyway, thank you again for being those caretakers that take care of the history of this community. And that's really what you're doing. And
Mhm.
I thank you.
Counselor Martinez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Where's Maral?
I'm sorry.
Where's Maral?
Oh, Morale got another job someplace.
Oh, I loved Maral. She did a great job. My last tour with you guys actually, I think was about a year ago, with Maral, and I
Mhm.
went through the whole facility, and I think that there's a lot of hidden treasures in there. I think in my visit, I could have sworn with a couple of the Heritage Museum board members at the time that the lease was on an annual basis, not a month-to-month basis.
It was an annual on an annual basis. And then about a year and a half to 2 years ago, we received a letter from the city indicating they did not want to continue the lease. They wanted to renegotiate it and that they would be in touch with us. And we're still waiting.
So is your lease current right now?
Mhm.
On a month to month.
So
That's-
in the lease is language which indicates if the lease is not renegotiated, then we would continue on a month-to-month basis
Hmm.
until it was renegotiated.
Yeah.
Mayor Graham, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I'll just add that they, in their current lease, the month to month, they pay $10 a year.
Did I say a month? Oh, I'm sorry.
$10 a year.
$10 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we did send a letter in 2023 saying that we'd like to renegotiate their lease. But then in the meantime, some changes took place in 2024 when you acquired
museum.
the museum. So they came to see me just
A couple weeks
just a
ago.
couple weeks
Mhm.
ago. So those, negotiations,
Mm.
can continue on. And, since we just negotiated a lease agreement with another museum here in town, the Da Vinci Museum, on our Priya project, I think we were looking at $12 a square foot for those negotiations. So that might be something to talk to council about, since that will no longer be city departments in that building. I don't know if you'd be looking to expand your museum or what that looks like. I know previously
We would love to
they
have
had
that space back.
yeah, had some
You know,
conversations
15
about
years
expanding.
ago, the city had us move out from that space for their employees, and they said it would be temporary. And it's 15 years later.
Yeah.
Well, I think that these are all good conversations. I got a lot of calls today of just mass panic about, vote no on the sale of the building today. And I kept being like, we're not taking a vote. And also, this is just the beginning of the conversation. So I think that your constituents, there was a lot of mass panic. So I'm hopeful that after tonight, there's a little bit more peace and calm, knowing that this is just the very start of the conversations. Definitely no formal action is occurring tonight. I think that that's really important to note. And to President Aliff's point, I think that the more that we have these conversations, because, just like you don't want to be a bad partner to us, the city doesn't want to be a bad partner together, to you. So I think that we share the same, we share a similar value and a
Mhm.
vision in protecting history. How can we move forward together?
Yes.
One of the things that I didn't hear as an option, when you were saying, oh, we're gonna have to move out, is you acquiring the rest of the building. Like Miss Pamela, you just said. So again, I think that there's a lot of potential options that we can keep talking about, but the sale of the building, and we're not kicking you out right now.
Well, and that's mostly what our constituents were responding to, is the presentation by the Public Works Chief 2 weeks ago, saying that it's going to be sold for $2 million in profit. And that was virtually all the conversation that was had in a public setting. So we were attempting to glean better information on that front. And I guess while I have the mic, I did want to clarify one thing from Mayor Graham. The comment that we were negotiating last week, there was no negotiations. We came in for a meeting to sign a grant that the city has given us for $15,000, and basically just to talk over terms of reporting on that grant. So in terms of a lease, there has been no negotiations to this point.
Okay. We got Councilor Boston and then Councilor Maestri after that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all that. I think history is one of the most important things. We learn a lot from it. You preserve a lot of things. You learn a lot of things. I think history is very important. And to a couple of Sarah's points, Mayor Graham sent an email about when the lease expired, which seems to be in 2023. And then, what we just did with the Da Vinci project. Man, whoever negotiated your lease for 84 cents a month, I need to meet that person, because man, if I can get my building for that, the restaurant or a couple other businesses, man, I'd be doing
Well,
a
if
lot
your
more.
businesses are willing to go nonprofit, hey.
Yeah, it's a good deal you got there, but
Do you, I don't know if you remember George Williams. I'm sure some of the others of you remember him. He negotiated with the city for that lease. He was good.
heck of a negotiator. And then in reference to your closing statements, Doug Baxter, if you know him,
Mhm.
just invited us there to the deal on, I think it's April 4th. I'll do my best to attend, because that sounds like an interesting event to be at for Cleopatra. But I also think your closing statement was a little unfair, saying that we're telling the voters we don't care about the history and things like that if we choose to move you from this building or sell this building. I think this deal, as it's been stated, is, a very, very generous deal. And, with the city and the crisis that it's in, certain things going on, especially with the lease expired, I think it's something to at least entertain looking at, finding a new deal. And if I'm not mistaken, I heard you guys said you acquired this property 30 years ago and you moved from a different location once already. So I'm sure the amount of artifacts and things you had back then were different. You had probably less of them. But with that being said, you know, it's been proven by you guys, it's not impossible. And if there was another location, I don't know, just throwing out hypotheticals here, maybe the Pope Block building. Everybody always talks about that building. Maybe it's got enough space for you guys to expand into. But like we said, this is not a discussion saying that we're kicking you out. This is not a discussion saying that that building will be sold tomorrow. This is just something that was, you know, potentially talked about. Nothing's gonna happen, I'm sure, before it comes across our desk. And as people have already said, there's been nothing coming across our desk besides the potential condensing of departments into 101 Riverwalk that would make that building a potential sale. But yeah, those are just some of my comments on that.
Okay, Councilor Maestri, please.
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions, or not questions, but I did receive some phone calls today also. I noticed that there's like a disdain for us taking back 101 Riverwalk Place in some of those conversations, you know, for city needs, because we need offices. I think one of the things or that Mayor Graham and I have learned, and most people who've been on council have learned, is that we don't always have the best agreements in the best interest of the people out there, as a whole, as a community. You know, it was said to me, well, how can you go for a grocery tax? Something about the grocery tax and this and that and everything else. And, you know, this is just taking responsibility for some of the fiscal decisions that were made in the past that aren't benefiting the community as a whole, that's causing us to go back, you know, and ask for something like a grocery tax to make the city whole and get their budget out of deficit. And so I think the fairest thing, though, is for the mayor to and the council to decide how much that monthly amount is going to be, because even on the even if there is a new buyer, they could the museum may not have to lose if they can you know, come up with a monthly rent, market rate rent or something for that space. But if we try to move forward and sell that space, that could be a deterrent to the sale. So I think that probably one of the first steps would be negotiating a new lease and a new lease amount. And then that way the museum could decide how they want to move forward, if it's going to even be feasible for them.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. I think we're gonna conclude here. You good, Joe?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you and thanks for all that you do. You're very special to this community. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, all of you. God bless you.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come tonight. We
Thank you for your
appreciate it.
time. Truly, we appreciate it.
I'd just like to conclude real quick with you guys, in reference to, I think you have such a great program, you know, 20 members here, 750. My gosh. What's the possibility of something as an organization as great as this and the commitment you have to someday being self-sustainable, you know, whether it's fundraising, whether it's grants, whether more, whatever, but is that something you could see on your down the road? I mean, I just think you have such a great mission. I don't think it would be that difficult to do it. That's just me, but I'm an optimist. So what's your feeling about that?
At this point, we are a nonprofit, and up until about 3 weeks ago, the Historical Society never had a single employee. We were all volunteer. And since taking on the Heritage Museum, we now have an executive director and 2 other employees. And we're ramping up and doing more things and being able to pursue fundraising And hopefully we'll, we may get there someday.
Well, this is
And-
the prime example of where local government or national government can be a curse on one end of it and be a blessing on the other.
Mhm,
So I'm
mhm.
just trying to impress upon you that I have a lot of faith in you. And I think if you start putting some plans that you might, look at the people you have here. Just, it's not just 20 people. You represent a lot of people.
Yes,
And
we
that's
sure
a pretty
do.
big, that's a pretty good grouping for as far as I'm concerned. But I want
Our
to thank you guys.
Facebook page reaches people all over the world. Japan, Yugoslavia, Germany, Hungary, Africa. It's amazing. It's just amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. We've got to go into the next presentation, but I want to thank you guys for coming and taking the time to let us know what's going on. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, the famous Mr. Jerry Pacheco from the Executive Director of the Pueblo Urban Renewal Authority. And Jerry, it's in reference to blight, and it's all yours.
Apologize for giving you a handout today.
Meeting is.
Scope of my presentation. I'm gonna try to be quick and to the point.
What I like.
All right. Good evening, members of the City Council, Honorable Mayor. I'm Jerry Pacheco with the Executive Director of the Pueblo Urban Renewal Authority. What I handed out to you this evening is a recommendation coming from the staff of the authority to kind of discuss and get feedback with respect to what is our community's policy regarding these burnt out houses, burnt out commercial buildings. And originally I had started out my presentation with a laundry list of pictures of these houses in our various neighborhoods and a bunch of other history and other documents. And I think that we're beyond that at this point. I think the people that are part of this discussion know what we're dealing with, know what the issues are. So I wanted to just kind of cut to the chase and provide you a goal, and then following best practices on strategic planning kind of operations. You have a goal, you develop strategies to help you attain that goal, and you have objectives that help you obtain that strategy to attain that goal. So I've provided one goal for you tonight to consider. And I'm just going to kind of go through it and explain how we got to this recommendation with respect to this very issue. Now, again, we're just talking about houses that catch fire. They don't have insurance. They're abandoned. They're blighted. The issue that we've all been struggling with, when a house burns down, it stays up for many, many years. Then someone figures out a way to pay for it. They knock it down. A lien's put on the property. The property sits there for 9 to 12 years. What we're doing isn't working. And what we're doing is exposing the community and ultimately the taxpayers to liability. And what I mean by that is when you work in government and you're familiar with things like the 1968 Housing Act, you learn certain phrases. And one of those phrases is disparate impact. And disparate impact has different meanings in the law. But basically, it all distills down to, are your rules and regulations, is your budgeting, are your actions disproportionately affecting a protected class? Be that age, be that religion, be that sexual orientation, be it ethnicity. I mean, all the stuff that's under that. And we've got a situation where we're not able to knock these problem buildings down fast enough, and we're getting to a critical mass that we're getting negative publicity, both on a local, state, and national basis. I mean, our comparisons, our quality of life metrics are off. And if we don't get ahead of this, we could be facing a situation where somebody might say, wait a minute, someone needs to intervene. And what I mean by someone, state or federal government needs to intervene because Pueblo as a community is not addressing this situation to whatever level that they think. What these usually happen, what happens in a situation like this is there's usually a class action suit of some sort, a complaint, and your attorney can correct me if I'm talking legal stuff that I don't know what I'm talking about, but basically they file a complaint with the Department of Justice. They raise the issue that's being addressed. They usually provide statistics. Give you a hypothetical. Of all the houses that burned down over the last 5 years, how many have been knocked down? How many of those houses have reduced the property value that have not been knocked down, have reduced the property values of the properties abutting those properties? What is the income level, ethnicity, or any other protected characteristic of the people that live next to these blight houses? In other words, are you more likely, if you are a minority, a protected class, are you more likely to suffer the consequences of living next to a house that burned and that person was not responsible, didn't have insurance? And so now we've got this blight in the neighborhood, and it doesn't matter if it's in an urban renewal area or not. We're just speaking hypotheticals here. You know, you start showing these statistics, and what they show is that something needs to change. And if the local government doesn't listen, then they complain to the state government and the federal government. Why do I bring this up? The last time I remember something as pervasive as this was when I was explaining the story about how the city had to settle the dispute with the Department of Justice with respect to ADA curb ramps. And the city's roadway overlay program was such that they were warned by folks in our handicapped community. The public community was city manager, city administration, city council at the time. Before I started with the city in 04. So I have nothing, I didn't see it happen. But the city dismissed the concerns of the handicapped community on the roadway overlay program, and they filed a complaint with the Department of Justice. So what happened? There was this Department of Justice settlement with the city because the city was going to lose in court. And so that's why the city, ever since that point in time, has allocated $500,000 of your CDBG funding for handicap curb ramp removal and replacement. You have dedicated staff in your public works department that is their job. Okay, so that's an instance where we were kind of warned that we need to do something, and people finally had enough, so we were compelled. The government was compelled. Doesn't matter what your budget is, if you have a court order, or in this case, a settlement with the Department of Justice tied to federal funding, you got to fall in line. So this is more of a, I think we need to start doing more to address this particular issue before it becomes a much larger problem. So, and now again, we're all talking about primarily single-family residences that have burned. The properties are abandoned. You don't know who the owner is, and they didn't have insurance. If a house burns and they have insurance, then it's the insurance company's responsibility to take care of it. But in these low-income neighborhoods where somebody may have inherited it from a family member, or somebody was an unscrupulous landlord, didn't have insurance, these things burn, they just walk away. Now, you have all the tools, we as a community have all the tools to address these issues. We're not reinventing the wheel. We've been dealing with, we as a local government have been dealing with this since we were founded. You look at all the original city codes dealing with blight and everything else. You have responsibilities spread within multiple departments, and I'll get to that in a second. I think our recommendation is to come up with a specific strategy for this specific issue, empower specific departments or individuals or groups of individuals to be accountable, to measure, manage, and report on how we're addressing this particular issue. What are the outcomes? Now, Probably the best way to get through this is I'm going to go through what is the overarching goal, talk about the 4 kind of potential strategies, and then if you want to dive into the objectives for those, we can. But the purpose of this is a discussion and to get direction from the city council. You know, what is your policy recommendation? What is it that you want all of us, be it in regional building, Pura, the health department, everybody that signs off on the paperwork, everybody that has to deal with this. We all need to be singing from the same sheet. We all need to be operating in a clear direction. And the purpose of today is to try to get some feedback to hopefully guide us with how we're going to deal with this issue. So this overarching goal, which is very common in a strategic plan, is to promote healthier and more livable neighborhoods through the demolition and redevelopment of individual blighted properties destroyed by fire. I think that's pretty straightforward. You could probably add things like when they're abandoned or when they don't have insurance. We're basically just talking about problem children. Then we talk about, okay, to achieve that, we need to what are the objectives? What is city council, our elected officials, what are they trying to address with this strategy? We need direction with respect to streamlining procedures. We have procedures in various sections of the municipal code and other codes and statutes. We need to align those in my recommendation. We need to commit to prioritizing funding for blight removal. Blight removal is a police power. It's health, safety, general welfare, just like zoning is. When you talk about the police powers, health, safety, general welfare, that is the #1 responsibility of local government. That's why your largest department is the police department, second is fire, and everything else flows from that. But sanitation, clean drinking water, healthy air, all that stuff is all tied into the police power. And you have laws and penalties to ensure compliance. And then the last of the 4 strategies is commit to prioritizing replacement housing for burnt out or abandoned properties. And that speaks to timeliness, responsiveness, and trying to repopulate these neighborhoods that have been in decline for years. And I could point to a lot of studies and best practices and things like that, but basically bottom line is these older neighborhoods, when houses burn down and you don't replace them, you're depopulating the neighborhood, which impacts whether or not you have a grocery store in the neighborhood, whether you have services in the neighborhood. You have to have the population for the services. It's always what do you do first? You know, chicken and egg. You need on new construction, you want the rooftops before you get the commercial, or do you put new industry which supports the roof? In our situation with our inner city neighborhoods, we need families and homeowners to repopulate these neighborhoods. So we look at this as an opportunity to make lemonade out of these lemons that we're given. We got a burnt out house, middle of the block. It's very disruptive. Nobody knows what to deal with it. Well, we think that there should be a specific process that albeit is pretty heavy handed, because using all the tools in your toolbox includes eminent domain condemnation. Now, the city has condemnation powers and authorities. The Urban Renewal Authority has condemnation powers and authority. They're a little bit different. What I'm going to suggest to the city or recommend to the city is use Urban Renewal's condemnation process instead of the city's. And the primary reason why this, and I've said this before, the city can condemn private property for a public use or to mitigate a public nuisance. Urban Renewal can go in and take private property that's been abused, blighted, neglected, or whatever, acquire it through a lengthy process and turn it over for private reuse. Okay? That's powerful because you're talking about property rights and you're talking about taking property away from one person and incentivizing someone else to do something with it because that person couldn't developed their property or didn't have insurance or whatever. So these are pretty heavy-handed tools. A lot of people push back on government condemnation of private property. Because if it goes unchecked, you know, what's next? Commercial buildings, and with politics sometimes can't be rational, or there's reasons why people do things like give a lease for $10 a year. I would argue that the city council at the time they would say that they were rational because they had to approve it. So there was some political reason why they did it. So, I guess I could go through all these objectives, but I'd really like to turn it over to council. Is this the right direction of where we're going? Or is there more explanation on what we're doing here?
Jerry, real quick, let me jump to Mark because he's got something wants to repeat to you.
I guess, are we getting into
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
just
think it's more
interject.
of a, is this the right track?
Well, thank you for bringing this up. Very important issue. I'm of the impression that urban renewal is literally in place to deal with this. So I don't know why urban renewal hasn't done it. Quite frankly, I think the goal, you know, should be that you come back to city. Here's the deal. Urban renewal doesn't ask us whether you have many projects that you do as an authority. And you don't come to city council and say, you know, we're doing this, we have this in the works, blah, blah, blah.
Disregard.
We literally don't see them until it's ready to be voted on in some way. And there may be a work session before that happens. I don't know why urban renewal, who set up perfectly to achieve a good end in this, doesn't come back to us and say, okay, we've identified in these urban renewal districts, these properties, and this is what we want to do. I cannot imagine city council ever sitting here going, you know what? I don't want you guys to take down that burnt down building that's been there for 30 years and build some nice affordable housing there. I think that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. I can't imagine anybody ever saying that. So is the goal for the city council to come up with something to move this forward? Or is the goal for urban renewal to do their job and go out there and go into these neighborhoods, come up with a plan, bring it back to us, and let's put it in place and make something happen? I mean, it's literally been way too long since we've dealt with this. And that's why when we look at our list full of blighted properties, burnt out properties, it's 2 pages long. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's long. And it's just sitting there with nobody doing anything. And you have more power than city council does to get that done.
Together, we do. Together. Many of these properties over time are not located in urban renewal areas. Some of them are, some of them aren't. In all of our areas, urban renewal cannot condemn, eminent domain condemn property without a vote of the city council. So we need a resolution from you. So if you're open to that, if it's in an urban renewal area, if we hear from your constituents, hear from council, hear from the mayor's office, whatever, if there is a priority to get one of these down in one of our areas, then we need to work together, get a resolution approved by city council instructing the urban renewal authority to begin condemnation. That kicks off the process for what I call a total take. You're not only knocking the house down, you're taking title ownership of the property. And what we're going to recommend is that not only do you knock it down, you replace that housing immediately or within a prescribed period of time. It's to identify, to answer all those questions. A house burned down, the person that was there had no heirs, died. And you don't know what to do with it.
Didn't urban renewal just achieve that on the east side with the properties that you put up? I believe it was a fourplex or
No, we built 2 duplex. We acquired those from the city.
Okay.
But when you take it, and we're gonna write what I call a postmortem of that. The problem was the funding to deal with the original property was done under the Obama administration. So then several years passed, and then the city, and I was with the city at that time too. So I mean, there was a lot going on. But so then that funding was used like in 2014, so different administration. That's what knocked it down. And here we are 10 years later, we were able to buy it from the city and then put houses there. That's too long. That's too long. If we want to get ahead of this and start making some headway, we need to prioritize these things like we prioritize crime, like we prioritize, because your citizens are bearing the negative consequences of a lack of government response to a situation that's beyond the neighbor's control, and the property owner is unreachable. If the property's abandoned, whatever, it's such a problem. There's no individual that you could take to court, that you could sue. All those things. We worked on a project many, many years ago. It was the old refractory over where they're building the highway now, over off Highway 50 bypass, the building that the CDOT's doing that at I-25 now. There used to be a big brick refractory over there. And the unhoused, this is years ago, were stripping copper and structural steel out of there. And well, it started to cave in. Well, the city came down pretty heavy handed on the company and threatened to sue them for the full blown cleanup. I mean, it was that serious, a multi-million-dollar cleanup.
Would it be a fair statement to say that the prevalence of these buildings and these, what I call investment killers, these homes, are in the lower income areas of the city? The majority of them?
By virtue of the fact of age and economic circumstance.
Okay. Brett Boston, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jerry, for that report. This sounds eerily similar to the first report you gave when I first got on council last year. You keep asking for policy. And this kind of sounds very similar to the meetings I went to with Mr. Gomez in relation to dirt, his task force to try to attack these blighted properties and things like that. And same thing you kind of said was, a policy, but I believe it was Mark from was regional building. He kind of said the issue we ran into is, the condemnation process as well. And we couldn't just take property. We had to have like a willing seller in a sense to kind of get this moving forward. What was ever kind of the hang up that kind of stopped us from moving forward with dirt?
Who's going to do it? If you have a property in Aberdeen doesn't have a homeowners association, but it's a economically stable neighborhood. And if you tried to create an urban renewal district in Aberdeen, you'd have a lot of pushback. But let's say a house from a longtime residence burns or something, and we have a situation where we have a burnt out house in Aberdeen. What are you going to do? Whose job is it? What is the protocol? Are they going to get an out of cycle funding request to city council to demolish it? It's not in a lower, it's not eligible for CDBG because it's not in a low income census tract. So who's going to pay for it? Also, or like the Albany, that was that commercial business over by Vidmar. This, sometimes you can go after those people. I'm not familiar if anybody went after them. I mean, I think there was leniency in some cases. The decision makers show leniency on some of these properties. But
Okay.
certainly I don't know what the cost of the Albany was, but that would be a situation where you demolish it and you put a lien on it. Well, does it make sense to sit on that property for 10 years? Or are there alternatives? It's establishing the policy. And when I say by policy, a government approved document that you are held responsible to. So when we have these meetings like dirt and we have these conversations, yeah, we're brainstorming, we're talking policy, but the rubber meets the road when it becomes legislation and is into law. And so then all of your department heads and all of our government partners all can point to, this is our policy. This is what we should be doing. So if you got a problem, where's the holdup? This is our policy. These are the individuals responsible within that policy. And if somebody's out for a month because they're on vacation, there needs to be somebody else. And so it's all about just carefully articulating what we're doing, what are our priorities, and then budgeting and appropriating to that to be responsive. Also, these community listening tours, what are your constituents saying is going on in their neighborhoods? How can we turn those around? So that's kind of where I'm going with this. This is just a recommendation, something for you to look at. But I would imagine that if you want to entertain stuff like this, I would recommend you put it in some guiding document approved by the city council in whatever format. That way, your public health official who has to sign off on demolition, your building official, your zoning office, your public works director, if it's going through urban renewal, us, that's the way all of us know. When it comes to these types of situations, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
In reference to getting back on track, Mayor,
Thanks, Chair. I just forwarded all of council, and Mr. Pacheco already has this, that my staff has already been working on this inventory list that we sent you a couple months ago, and I believe it has 26 properties that are listed in the two urban renewal districts, the East Side and Bessemer. So we already have a pretty good start with that. We've conducted reviews and physical inspections of all the pictures and all the properties. And so these are properties that Melissa Cook from my office thinks that Urban Renewal could be an excellent partner in working with the owner, or if they're vacant, or if they're city-owned properties, to probably get these buildings down and find a better use for the space. So we've already started this process and already have a list of 26 properties that we think can be moved on quickly. And then Mr. Pacheco and I have met a couple times over the last couple weeks talking about a few other projects and properties that are in the Bessemer area. For instance, Councilor Gomez, the house on Route. We know that needs to come down real quick. But as in regards to the financing piece of this, the city sets aside money every single year for demo. That's not just CDBG funds that can be used to demo properties throughout the city. That's what we used on the Albany building. It was $900,000 the city set aside, and we'll get that property now and hopefully put it to a good use. So a lot of these staff recommendations that Urban Renewal is providing today are things that we're already working towards, but we can put a resolution together, an MOU together that better lists who's specifically responsible when it comes to which property, which avenue is going to be the quickest, most effective and efficient way to get the house down in the most effective timeline. And I think that that's what Mr. Pacheco is kind of asking us to put together. But we already have the majority of it started with the 26 properties that have been inspected and inventoried and are ready to go.
all right, I'm going to jump to Joe real quick. Joe?
Thank you. Jerry, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you. Your department's doing some great things. Thank you for the duplexes that you put up on the east side and Second Street there, and it enhances the area, and we're going to be meeting with you this week again, and I'm going to talk to you about a couple houses that we have there on Second Street and that have been occupied. And
I actually have an update for you.
Okay, great. Great.
The two houses at the corner of Hudson and Second Street. I've made contact with the ownerships, and we're trying to acquire those through private sale. In the event that we're able to acquire those through private sale, we're going to recommend that the authority board move forward and get those down and possibly contract with Posada to build some replacement homes as quickly as possible. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of all of this. It's one thing to knock a house down, but to replace the house immediately, to repopulate the neighborhood. So that's going to require teamwork. that requires teamwork and partnerships and being very creative to building. You know, we were able to build those duplexes and we were able to give Posada a really good rate on those. We took a loss on it. We're government. We're not in the business of making profit, but we did it to affect change in the neighborhood, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. And so who's going to be responsible for that piece? Who's going to be measured? Are you doing your job or not? I guess is my point. When right now your director of public works is responsible for demolishing these buildings. Well, he's responsible for the entire city, all of the public works functions. This is just one specific thing and his laundry list of everything else. I think it's more of having a very clear, you know, when we have these situations, here's the program, here's the protocol, here's who you need to call. If something on this established policy is not working, then it rises to management, city council, et cetera. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a meet.
Hold on a second. Joe, you gonna finish up?
I'm not done yet. I'm gonna have a meeting with you this week. We set it up with Andrea. And I'm gonna bring with me Cheryl Anderson from the I Will Project to talk with you as well. But those two houses that you're talking about, just a story for everybody to hear here. The woman that lives in the third house is an elderly woman. First house was burned down, as you're well aware. The second house was burned down with a young couple that had children, and they moved in with her and her roof was burned. We got that fixed, and then they got a place to live. Well, now the homeless are back in the second house, and they went and took her fence and used it for firewood. So we got that taken care of now too. That's done. But I want to thank you for what you're trying to do in this community to take it back to where it needs to be. I want to thank you publicly for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're gonna move on to Mr. Boston.
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up on kind of what I was saying on the first one, it was that policy, the government document. That's what you were saying in those meetings as well. And then I believe it was potentially you and Mr. Gomez said you're going to try to work on this thing that you're requesting now today. My question was whatever happened with that was what I was kind of wondering. What I kind of just fizzled out and I never heard any more about it.
Well,
what was the hang-up?
it's kind of a situation, and I don't fault any of my colleagues or peers, but it's kind of one of these things. You know, it's like, okay, well, urban renewal is supposed to be handling blight. Okay, we don't have all the resources in the planet. We got 4 employees total. I'm a working director. And not all these problem children are even in our urban renewal areas. The one on route caught fire before that district was even created. Now it's number 1 in our priority list. And at the end of this, I'm going to ask if you're okay with us bringing a list of properties that you would authorize urban renewal to initiate condemnation. I mean and there'll be a public hearing, and it's going to be, you know, you're talking about taking property from somebody. This is not to be done lightly.
I'm just gonna interject real quick. It was in reference to the DIRT program, Demolition Infill Redevelopment Task Force. And a lot of things that we brought up to Jerry, they were already working on. So a lot of the objectives, we kind of combined them, and I stepped back and said, they know what they're doing, and they've proven it with Joe's projects and the designations and Bessemer. Councilor Flores, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to ask, what is a cost, typical cost on a single family, dwelling? And what is a cost of say a 2-story like the one on route? What is the range there?
Are you talking about cost of demolition?
Cost of demolition.
I think what we need to get to is an understanding with all of, one of these things, objective 1.2.2, empower city staff, Pura Regional Building and City County Health Department to collectively develop and test a specific implementation program. And what I mean by that is when this provision is triggered, all of us at these levels know what we're supposed to be doing. But also as part of that is what we're hearing is driving up the cost on the demolitions is the environmental cleanup, the abatement. Okay. I would like to get a group of folks together to have a conversation with our health department and say, hey, look, we got to figure out a way to encourage getting these things down as quickly as possible. Because if there's a disincentive, it's too expensive, it's too whatever, are we okay as a community to let the house sit there for 10 years? Because all that lead-based paint, asbestos fibers, everything else is flying all over that neighborhood. And is that not a public health threat? I mean, it's like picking the worst of the two evils, you know? And I think having a conversation and getting a direction from the city leadership as to, hey, we can't tolerate this anymore. We got to do something. When we have this situation, we cannot let it linger. At some point, someone is going to have the resources to challenge it. Just like when the city tried to condemn Doug Bruce's property on East 8th Street, and they screwed up the process. So the city stopped condemning private houses after that point.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Maestri, you have anything?
Well, I've just been watching this. One of the things that was said that has me asking a question is when we give the CBDG grant funding, or we can use that for the condemnation process or demolition process, are we allocating, who's allocating those monies? Are they coming directly from that department head, or is it coming from the citizens group? Where's that? How's that being allocated? Who's giving the recommendation on that allocation?
Well, I think it's formulaic funding coming from the federal government to the state, to the city. You budget and appropriate the money as part of your annual budget.
So that is, Mayor, is that the director of the department?
Counselor, it depends where the properties are. Some of the money is general fund dollars, some of it is HUD dollars. Mr. Pacheco is right. When they are HUD dollars, you have to do the environmental review, which if they're in a floodplain, it could take months, it could take years. So it's quicker for the city to use general fund dollars to go in and demo these properties. But we do get an allocation every year from HUD to our demo account, and it's whichever houses need to come down the fastest and makes sense, go to the top of the list, depending on what kind of review they need to have. It's if it's in a floodplain or if it's an environmental review. So it just kind of depends, and that comes from the city, not the CSAC committee.
No, well, I wasn't thinking CSAC. I was thinking of the citizen committee, that, we get citizen committees to get in to the CSAC, the CBD grant funding programs. Not the CSAC committee, but there's always been a little citizen committee that's looked at things and made suggestions on how we should spend the money.
Yeah, the demos that we do come directly from the city staff.
They do. Are we allocating enough? I mean, are we allocating all of it, or are we dividing it up between other things when we receive that funding?
The demo funds can only be used specifically for those demos. And then the general fund dollars that are set aside for demo are also used just for demo. So I guess it just depends what pot of money we're going to use specific to what part of town or what project we're looking to see what makes the most sense.
Okay.
And what we're proposing is really two things. It's not only the demolition, it's the replacement housing. So we got a cost of demo, but we also have the cost of, in a lot of cases, partnering with our nonprofit community like Posada, Habitat for Humanity, NeighborWorks, et cetera, partnering with them to be the recipient of that housing that, there are a lot of grants that as government we can't get that maybe the nonprofit could get. So it's depending on the situation, maybe you lead with TIF dollars because you don't want federal requirements in, but the city is able to help on the housing side, or vice versa. The city has something already in the way, they're gonna knock it down immediately, then urban renewal comes behind with somebody to put the house. It's gotta be a coordinated dance because this is not a simple, easy to do thing, you know? Getting the market, getting the numbers to work, working with these, but we have such a tremendous demand of housing and crime, and the statistics will show you repopulate these neighborhoods, it will have a positive impact on the home ownership and crime reduction.
Um, can I just ask one more question, Chair Gomez? So, Mr. Pacheco, you were city manager for about 10 years, correct?
I was city manager for 3.5.
Oh,
Felt
3.5. Okay. And I mean, Pueblo's no stranger to blight. We've always experienced blight. Did you try to put any of these policies, changes and ideas in front of the council at that time to get them implemented?
Well, I got two answers to that. One was I tried to prohibit people from parking on unimproved surfaces in their front yard. That was turned down. And then the second piece was we were in the middle of the Great Recession from 2008 to 12. And our undesignated fund balance for future appropriation number was 0. I think your number today is 20 million. So we had a pretty serious financial situation back then. So we
Oh,
didn't have a
so you
whole lot
didn't
of
have,
discretion. Our at that time, 2000, end of 8, 9, and 10 was all budget. All budget. We had to cut millions from the city's budget. Yeah, it was if you look at your budget cover sheet, when you look at unfunded, undesignated fund balance for future appropriation over and above your reserves.
so you didn't address blight during that time because it didn't fit within your budget. Is that what you're saying?
Right. We had no discretionary spending.
Okay, and then, just a clarification, you didn't buy those lots from the city? Didn't they, give them to you for your,
No, I believe we've purchased both those and then we're gonna buy the next one for like $2,000, I think. So whatever the
Oh.
city's costs were, we're reimbursing the city because I think you actually have to reimburse the federal government.
Right.
Okay.
If there was any HUD money used, we have to pay it back before
Yeah.
those properties can be released. Counselor, and also in regards to the CDBG funds, every year the city receives about $1.4, $1.5 million from CDBG. Only 15% of that money every single year can be used to demo properties. So that's about $225,000 that we get every year, which we can probably do about 2 properties with, depending on the size of the property. So like the house on Route, that one's coming in at about $180,000. So it's really limited to what we can do with the CDBG funds on a yearly basis, only at that 15%.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get creative, and I think working together, we can come up with some of these strategies, and they may be on a property by property basis. The 2 duplexes, we allocated 750,000 to do those 2 duplexes. So costs are skyrocketing, and we got to deal with it more than just 1 or 2 properties a year.
Well, in reference to time again, Jerry, is there any last comment you want to make? Because we're going to go into executive session. We have 2 of them to deal with tonight. So
No,
anything
I
else?
guess my point is I just wanted to provide you a document to respond to. I put it in a format
Okay.
that is pretty standardized type stuff. If you have any written questions, comments, concerns, but the only thing, I will say just one thing. I sent you all, and it's probably been some time, but I could resend it to you. Our spot blight removal program, all that, really what that means is if you have a problem property in Aberdeen and city council can instruct the urban renewal authority to go after that property, we create a single property district. Do not collect any tax increment off of it. That way you extend the jurisdiction, but don't have to do the negotiation with all the taxing bodies. So if you do have a problem property, there's that process to allow the total take of the whole property.
Before you leave, I just want to thank Jerry. People don't realize this guy's a four-person operation, and with the things you guys are getting done, it's pretty impressive to me. So I'm just, for what it's worth, I want to thank you for coming here and giving us opportunity to respond to you. But thank you very much, Jerry.
All right. Well,
And
thank you
Mr.
very
Mark-
much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. President, please read the resolution.
Mr. Chair, I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-402, Parent 4, Parent E, Parent I. And the following additional details are provided for identification purposes. 2026 collective bargaining agreements. And for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS Section 24-6-402, Parent 4, Parent B, and the following additional details are provided for identification purposes, city charter requirements and collective bargaining. And for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS Section 24-6-402, Parent 4, Parent E, Parent I, and to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, or sale of any real, personal, or other property interest pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, Parent 4, Parent A, and more fully described as follows, to discuss the sale of commercial property. No adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action shall occur at any executive session that is not open to the public.
We have a second? Correct. We have a second? Okay, those opposed, those in favor? Aye, aye. Good. And we're done for the night here, right?
No, you have to come back.
I have to come back to adjourn. We're gonna go to executive session. We'll be back to adjourn shortly. Time is it right now? We're adjourning for the night, right? It's now 21:23. We are adjourned for the night. Thank you.